Since birth, one burning ambition consumed his soul, conquering the absolute peak of martial arts. Yet time revealed a crushing reality. A mere mortal lifespan could never grasp ultimate supremacy. However, his blazing obsession refused to simply die out. This sheer desperation dragged him toward a forgotten myth, a celestial dragon hoarding a legendary golden fruit of immortality. His epic crusade climaxed in a blood-soaked clash against the colossal guardian beast. Finally, stepping into the sacred sanctuary, his jaw dropped. The mythical golden relic was not just folklore. It existed right before him, radiating an otherworldly aura. It captivated him. Exhausted, he collapsed onto the slain behemoth, completely hypnotized by the glow. Regaining his composure, he approached the mystical tree, absolute triumph surging through his veins. This divine treasure would forge his ultimate destiny. Without a second thought, he devoured the radiant prize. Cataclysmic power violently erupted within his core. His flesh literally reconstructed itself. From that legendary moment, he became Gilfus Eldragon, the undisputed supreme master of the realm. Yet the ruthless passage of time eventually withered even this invincible titan. Bedridden and fading, his grieving bloodline crowded the silent room. Everyone sensed the legendary patriarch's impending, inevitable end. Gilliam, his eldest heir, desperately gripped his frail hand, silently pleading against fate. The mighty Eldragon patriarch commanded his son to swallow his tears. Destiny had simply called his name. Forcing a broken smile, Gilliam whispered how empty the massive estate felt without their mother. Losing him would completely shatter them. But Gilfus fiercely demanded strength over sorrow. As suffocating silence instantly dropped, Gilfus mentally revisited that golden fruit. Perhaps those ancient immortality myths were entirely fake after all. Regardless, surviving to build his incredible family felt deeply rewarding, a truth far superior to any myth. He boldly declared a life perfectly fulfilled, zero regrets remaining. Yet inside, agonizing deception violently gnawed at his soul. Standing at death's door, his obsession burned furiously. Given one more century, he would completely conquer the absolute martial apex, that impossible zenith forever taunting his grasp. He fiercely clutched that raw ambition as darkness finally took him. Suddenly, reality utterly shattered. His eyes violently snapped open. Complete disorientation hit hard. Was that agonizing death merely a brief nap? Bizarre surroundings instantly screamed wrong. His limbs felt impossibly weightless, bearing zero resemblance to his grand deathbed. Glancing at his own palms, absolute shock paralyzed his brain. These tiny fingers were not his. He had reincarnated as an infant. The sheer absurdity of this reality punched him hard. For an unrivaled martial god, this felt utterly insane. Complete bewilderment washed over him. Who could possibly bypass his divine senses? Suddenly, an electric realization hit the legendary fruit. The terrifying truth violently clicked. The mythical treasure did not pause aging. It triggered complete rebirth. While totally unpredictable, pure euphoria instantly flooded his tiny veins. Destiny had literally handed him a brand new canvas to claim absolute supremacy. His supreme senses quickly detected surrounding presence. Scanning the architecture, nostalgic recognition hit him like a massive truck. The legendary Eldragon estate. Miraculously, he spawned right back into his own bloodline. Dozens of babies surrounded his crib. While questioning this massive infant gathering, servants practically marched inside holding bottles. Yet swirling inside was not formula, but terrifying crimson sludge. Gilfus silently observed them preparing this menacing scarlet fluid, assuming a standard, albeit bizarre feeding routine was about to commence. Suddenly, a shrieking baby goblin was violently dragged forward. They ruthlessly shoved the mysterious red liquid down its squirming throat. Instantly, gruesome convulsions overtook the creature. Blinding crimson aura erupted from its core before it brutally detonated into horrific gore. Utter paralysis gripped Gilfus's tiny frame. Pure dread overwhelmed his infant consciousness. What kind of demonic ritual was this family running? A servant casually noted that proper dilution made the deadly concoction survivable. While they systematically approached the neighboring cribs, hands suddenly hoisted Gilfus upward. Glaring at the approaching nozzle, his martial soul shuddered. An overwhelmingly monstrous, catastrophic energy violently radiated from that vial. His legendary instincts instantly identified the horrific ingredient: pure, unadulterated dragon blood. Absolute poison for a fragile newborn vessel. Yet, dodging was impossible as the silicone forcefully breached his tiny lips. Instinctively, his infant reflexes swallowed. Cataclysmic, untamed energy instantly blitzed through his minuscule meridians. Agonizing tremors racked his bones. Yet Gilfus completely understood the stakes. The chaotic primordial essence of literal dragons now rampaged inside him. A suicidal gamble, definitely, but simultaneously an unprecedented cheat code. Initial survival instincts desperately screamed to reject the lethal fluid, actively fighting the explosive aura. However, a wildly arrogant revelation struck. Dominating this monstrous essence could permanently shatter his limits. catapulting his potential way beyond his previous prime. The absolute apex suddenly looked achievable, igniting his ironclad resolve. He violently chugged the draconic elixir, searing golden mana aggressively hijacked his circulatory system. However, his legendary battle-hardened mental fortitude flatly refused to shatter. "Never look down on me," his soul fiercely roared. "I remain the undisputed Gilphus Eldragon." He gritted his teeth, conquering that absolute agony. The maid just stared, totally paralyzed with shock, as this newborn chugged the lethal poison. A single drop meant instant death, yet he completely defied fate. Two rival dragon auras clashed violently within his tiny veins. As the victor emerged, pure god-tier energy flooded little Gilphus. As those roaring auras fused into one, Gilphus sensed a legendary opening. He drained the vial, enduring soul-crushing torment. Death rejected him. Instead, his very DNA mutated, absorbing the chaotic power. He smirked, noticing a few other babies actually survived. A wicked little grin stretched across his face, marveling at sheer human survival instincts. But despite hoarding all this insane mana, his infant vessel was fragile. Exhaustion crashed over him, sending the reincarnated Dragon King into a deep slumber. 7 years vanished. That baby, now a total beast named Zeke, possessed absolute zero limits. He endlessly ground out one-armed push-ups, balancing a massive boulder. Hitting rep 1000, he effortlessly launched the heavy stone skyward. Then he practically levitated off the ground. Zeke, formerly the legendary Gilphus Eldragon, admired his own terrifying specs. He knew this raw horsepower stemmed from that ancient bloodline, pulsing through his veins. In this twisted era, society believed everyone housed an internal mana core. That baby-feeding ritual unlocked devastating potential. The rare survivors inevitably evolved into absolute monsters, leaving normal humans completely in the dust. Within Zeke, this draconic aura burned exponentially hotter. He was absolutely convinced his current base stats crushed his past life's childhood level. Plus, he held the exclusive record of chugging an entire vial of pure dragon essence. Thanks to that insane flex, his anatomy mutated beyond logic. Yet despite this overwhelming energy, he felt totally scammed. He was stuck as a 1-star novice. Even though his brutal grind deserved a 4-star rank, stars literally defined your absolute combat tier. The higher your star count, the more broken your abilities became, but leveling up was pure hell. Back in his prime, Zeke dominated at 10 stars, a god-tier milestone literally no one else ever touched. Time really speedruns, Zeke muttered inwardly. He was already 7 years old, a massive downgrade from his centuries of ruling. Turns out he was the illegitimate heir to the Eldragon Syndicate. His mom passed early, and his deadbeat dad was nowhere to be found. The wildest plot twist. A full millennium had vanished since his reincarnation. Society devolved into a savage wasteland, where only absolute alphas survived. The ultimate proof of this dark era, that unhinged tradition of force-feeding newborns volatile dragon blood. Following that came a lethal meat grinder known as the Dragon Trial. Only the absolute units who survived both nightmares earned the right to elite combat training. Zeke technically qualified, yet whenever he interrogated his handler about his missing mentor, she constantly dropped the same icy excuse: classified information. Now hitting age 7, Zeke remained entirely self-taught, lacking any official guidance. The math wasn't mathing, considering every other survivor had already kicked off their academy arcs. He was basically quarantined with this mute caretaker. Pressing her for details again, she simply deflected, questioning why he even complained. Zeke let out a heavy sigh. Maxing out his physical stats took priority right now. He could easily self-study martial arts later. Probing for any intel regarding the other prodigies or his bloodline, the servant stonewalled him with absolute silence. Losing patience, Zeke pierced her with a deadly glare. "Are you ever going to drop the act?" he snapped. She predictably repeated her scripted NPC dialogue. "Isn't this literal torture?" Zeke murmured, feigning sadness. The maid coldly stated she was merely executing orders to maintain his basic survival. Funny enough, she was actually a 3-star warrior, perfectly capable of teaching him beginner combat. But Zeke couldn't care less. After 7 long years, her frozen vibe was normalized. Seeking action, Zeke ventured straight into the Forbidden Woods. The caretaker literally just watched him vanish into the shadows. Zeke clicked his tongue, slightly irritated by her zero-care attitude. Deep inside, the ancient timberland, suffocating darkness, devoured the fading sunlight. Without skipping a beat, Zeke casually uprooted highly toxic flora and straight up swallowed them. The flavor was pure trash, but building poison resistance was crucial for his hardcore routine. Suddenly, a chilling shift in the atmosphere hit him. "Stay frosty," he thought. A heavy, murderous gaze locked onto his spine from the shadows, and the sinister aura refused to fade. Exhaling sharply, Zeke completely lost his patience with the stalking game. He boldly ordered the lurker to step up. Instantly, he vanished, blending flawlessly into the overgrown brush. Crouched in stealth mode, Zeke tracked a suffocating demonic energy closing in. Peering through the vegetation, his eyes locked onto the target. A massive rage-fueled anger bore. His brows furrowed sharply, analyzing the bizarre corrupted black miasma bleeding from its skin. He had literally never witnessed that variant. The colossal beast continued grazing, completely clueless to his presence. Boom Zeke manifested from the shadows, jump-scaring the massive titan. Roaring with feral fury, it bulldozed straight toward him, but Zeke didn't flinch. Instead, a predatory smirk painted his face. Battle time. The monster dashed like a freight train, yet Zeke practically teleported, sidestepping it flawlessly. Simultaneously, blinding golden aura exploded around his knuckles. He unleashed a devastating radiant strike that completely pierced straight through the beast's thick armor. He chuckled darkly. That critical hit dealt way more damage than calculated. Even hard stuck at 1 star, his damage output was astronomically broken compared to normal rookies. Effortlessly hoisting the massive carcass over his shoulder, he craved an even greater power leap. The adrenaline crashed, leaving him completely exhausted. Ignored by his bloodline for 7 brutal years, he decided it was finally time to vanish and forge his own legendary path. Lurking in the pitch-black shadows, a scout watched in pure shock. This untrained 1-star rookie had just obliterated a monstrous boar with a single devastating strike. It completely baffled him that Zeke could sense his hidden presence. His mother had passed away, and his father, the absolute clan leader, treated him like absolute trash. A discarded son possessed no right to hold such monstrous power, yet bearing the leader's blood meant eyes tracked his every move. Hence the scout's secret surveillance mission. He seriously questioned if this terrifying hidden strength stemmed directly from his father's supreme dominating bloodline. This wild anomaly would be thrilling to watch evolve. Smirking, the mysterious scout melted completely back into the pitch-black abyss. Inside his shack, Zeke shoved his meager belongings together, preparing to vanish. His sharpened instincts suddenly detected massive auras surrounding his door. Why would elites track him down? Pressing his ear against the wood, he eavesdropped as they casually chatted about the quiet atmosphere. Sensing zero killing intent, he made his bold move. Swinging the heavy door wide open, he stared them down and bluntly demanded their business. The warriors flinched in surprise. Spotting the legendary L-Dragon crest on their uniforms, Zeke groaned, wondering what his pathetic bloodline wanted today. Dropping into a respectful bow, their commander announced they had arrived to escort him to a mandatory clan trial. A trial? Zeke scoffed, pure annoyance blazing in his eyes. It was absolute hypocrisy to demand testing when they had literally never taught him a single technique. Days passed and Zeke stood before the massive Grand Elder Dragon estate. Staring at the majestic architecture felt like stepping into a bizarre illusion. Yet playing the loyal son was not his vibe. A completely different hidden motive had actually dragged him back into this toxic hellhole. A snobby attendant immediately blocked his path, bluntly ordering the young master to strip off his filthy travel rags before stepping onto their pristine floors. The reality of his sudden recall quickly clicked into place. It all revolved around an elite training ground known strictly as the Dragon's Nest. For over 1,000 years, the L-Dragon Syndicate had operated this legendary academy. Gaining admission was the ultimate desperate fantasy of every clan heir. Coincidentally, the massive opening ceremony kicked off today. Zeke realized he was literally dragged here to conquer the academy's brutal mandatory entrance gauntlet. A crushing pressure settled on his shoulders. He was stepping in blind, holding zero intel on modern clan politics or their strict traditions. Bitter frustration crashed over him like a tidal wave. They disrupted his entire life over a stupid test. The bizarre timing made absolutely zero sense. His bags were packed to explore the vast unknown and carve out a legendary destiny far from their toxic shadow. Spacing out near the towering academy gates, his brooding was interrupted when a timid kid cautiously shuffled into his space. The nervous kid Rangus gently asked if he was all right, pointing out that Zeke looked incredibly stressed out. Blinking away his surprise, Zeke requested the kid's name. Rangus awkwardly introduced himself, admitting he only stepped up because Zeke's dark aura seemed overwhelmingly anxious. Zeke gave a chill response while stealthily scanning the shockingly potent mana pulsing through the tiny kid. For someone so deeply introverted, Rangus possessed terrifyingly sharp instincts. Dropping his guard, Zeke sincerely apologized for spacing out and radiating such an unapproachable, gloomy vibe. Revealing his name, he frankly confessed that he was entirely clueless regarding the mechanics of the upcoming trial. Sweating slightly at the mention of the gauntlet, Rangus reassured him that the Academy's trials rarely changed their core format from year to year. Hearing Zeke declare total ignorance, Rangus practically dropped his jaw. Charging into a life-altering clan assessment with zero strategy was basically a glamorous suicide mission. Before Rangus could spill the vital intel, an obnoxious sneer shattered the peace. A swaggering rival stomped over aggressively, branding Rangus a pathetic loser. Pure terror flashed in the widened eyes of Rangus. He instantly recognized this nightmare. It was the notorious bully Retin. Flashing a predatory grin, Retin ordered the kid to run home before his bones got shattered, treating him like utter trash, polluting their air. Stuttering violently, Rangus insisted he came to compete. Invading his space, Retin snickered darkly, his eyes dripping with violent malice and deadly intent. Retin unleashed a cruel, villainous laugh. He declared it was impossible for Rengus to ever survive, before viciously slandering his father as a worthless pseudo-dragon. Rengus clenched his trembling fists, pure rage igniting within. Zeke analyzed the tense scene silently. This conflict exposed the ruthless hierarchy governing the Eldragon Empire. Reigning at the absolute peak of the younger generation were the elite novice whelp dragons. Next ranked the fierce soldier child dragons. Trailing them stood the veteran adult captains, and ruling over everyone sat the terrifying ancient elder dragons. Groveling at the absolute bottom were the despised pseudo-dragons. These miserable outcasts were the unfortunate failures who got utterly crushed by the dragon's nest, permanently branded as broken anomalies. Yet Rengus harbored a burning ambition. He vowed to prove these rejected outcasts possessed the roaring hearts of true dragons. Stepping into the spotlight, Zeke examined the bully's unearned arrogance. With chilling calmness, he questioned why Retin felt so blindly confident about the failure. Retin whipped around, furiously screaming at Zeke to identify himself and barking out a challenge for an immediate brawl. Completely unbothered, Zeke maintained his icy composure and coldly repeated his query. He demanded the actual logic behind this pathetic bully's absolute, unwavering certainty. Shoving a finger at Rengus, Retin roared that the answer was painfully obvious, branding him a fragile loser. Zeke just tilted his head, unimpressed. Zeke bluntly noted his aura sense proved Rengus actually radiated superior strength. Rengus froze, staring at him in absolute shock. Nobody had ever shielded his honor like this. Meanwhile, the arrogant cronies backing Retin erupted in blazing anger, entirely unable to comprehend. Zeke figured these punks were softer than a bootleg dragon. But before fists could fly, a heavy hitter stepped onto the scene. It was the head examiner barking out that the brutal entrance trials were officially kicking off. He ordered the rookies to fall in and grab their tags. Walking off, Retin shot Zeke a lethal glare, swearing he would not forget this insult. Zeke let out a tired sigh. In his mind, kids these days were way too triggered over nothing. Rengus nervously pointed out they were literally his age, adding that anyone would snap if called totally useless. A knowing smirk tugged at the corner of Zeke's mouth as he mumbled a chill response. This trial was mandatory, so backing out simply was not an option for them. But when Rengus dropped the bomb, that skipping was totally allowed. Zeke looked clueless, proving he was completely out of the loop. Sweating bullets, Rengus begged his buddy to tap out before he got absolutely wrecked out there. Zeke simply scoffed at the warning. A prodigy like him did not even know the meaning of fear. Rengus shook his head at this crazy ego while Zeke just laughed and rushed them toward the starting line. Sighing deeply, Rengus trailed behind. Once at the arena, the proctor laid out their one basic objective. To survive this round, they only had to leave a single scratch on the massive boulders behind him. Personal gear was banned. They could only use academy weapons or their bare fists, getting exactly 3 strikes each. Zeke groaned in total disappointment. Surviving a literal dragon trial as a toddler made this look like a complete joke. He craved a real nightmare challenge, but this felt like child's play. The proctor then called the first victim up. A shaking rookie grabbed a standard blade and swung at the colossal rock with absolutely everything he had. A deafening metallic screech shattered the silence. Jaws dropped as the solid steel blade completely snapped in half. The crushing recoil violently shot up the hilt, instantly shattering the kid's arm. Zeke watched absolutely speechless. He never imagined an entrance exam being this savage. The boy collapsed, screaming in pure agony. Ice cold, the examiner reminded him he still had 2 attempts left, asking if he wanted to keep going. Since the rookie was basically paralyzed, the proctor instantly failed him and ordered the medics to clear the floor. As they dragged the broken kid away, the next number rang out. Witnessing this absolute carnage left Rengus shaking. Feeling deeply annoyed, Zeke turned to his buddy, demanding to know what made these stupid rocks so dangerous. Rengus stammered that the boulders instantly regenerated. Worse, they bounced any kinetic force right back at you, multiplied by 100. Zeke thought that was totally overkill for a basic test, but Rengus insisted leaving a mark was actually doable. The trick was perfectly syncing your internal aura before making physical contact. Zeke let out a soft murmur of realization. He finally grasped that raw mana control completely outranked basic sword skills in this specific trial. Scanning the terrified rookies in line, he bet almost nobody would survive this, especially not those cocky rich kids. As the slaughter continued, student after student failed miserably. Dozens were brutally crushed by the terrifying reflection magic. Suddenly, the proctor barked out Zeke's number. Flashing an icy grin, he confidently announced it was finally showtime. A panicked Rengus grabbed his shoulder, begging him one last time to just drop out and stay safe. Telling him to chill out, Zeke swaggered straight toward the boulder. Approaching the front line, the examiner's eyes violently widened. A terrifying aura began radiating from Zeke's body, leaking just a fraction of his legendary past life power. Offered a weapon, Zeke just smirked and raised his bare hands, claiming fists were enough. The entire crowd gasped. Nobody believed an unarmed kid could possibly put a single dent into that mythical boulder. They were dead set on watching his bones explode on impact. Watching from the sidelines, Rangus was hyperventilating with dread. That pure terror quickly morphed into self-hatred, wishing he had physically dragged his buddy away from this suicide mission. The proctor dropped his hand, signaling the start. Zeke casually strolled up to the monolithic rock and touched its surface. He briefly marveled at this ancient relic, but quickly tossed those thoughts aside because none of it mattered anymore. Channeling explosive mana, blinding light ignited around his clenched fist. Meanwhile, Rangus was literally shaking in absolute terror. But Zeke's blood was pumping with pure adrenaline. This was his first real chance to unleash his absolute limits. This enchanted rock was the ultimate punching bag. Suddenly, Rangus's tear-filled eyes snapped wide open in pure panic. Unleashing a deafening battle cry, Zeke detonated his signature burst strike directly into the indestructible surface. A catastrophic shockwave erupted on impact. As tornadoes of dust and shattered rock exploded outwards, a stunned Rangus desperately shielded his face. As the dust finally settled, the examiner's jaw practically hit the floor, his eyes completely glued to the unbelievable aftermath. Zeke chilled in the dead center of the absolute carnage, flexing a wildly satisfied smirk. He casually mentioned his legendary technique was still way too wild to control perfectly. Chuckling at his own brutally mangled hand, he knew his ultimate training arc was only just beginning. The rest of the crowd froze in dead silence, their brains utterly glitching, trying to process this impossible flex. Retton, meanwhile, looked violently triggered, totally refusing to accept that Zeke casually shattered the divine test stone. A mysterious woman in the silent crowd flashed a subtle smile, instantly hooked by Zeke's insane vibe. While the entire room stayed paralyzed by absolute shock, our main character completely ignored the heavy atmosphere, chilling and waiting for his final grade. The proctor remained totally glitched out. That regenerating relic was strictly designed to withstand strikes from elite-tier masters, not rookies. Yet this kid defied reality. The examiner frantically muttered about Zeke's noble status, questioning if his monstrous strength awakened from a legendary bloodline. That devastating art also sparked massive déjà vu. Suddenly, an impatient shout from Zeke completely shattered the examiner's trance. Demanding his official score, Zeke snapped the proctor out of his panic, forcing the guy to finally declare a passing grade. Immediately, a second official stepped up, tossing Zeke a tiny vial swirling with mysterious green energy. Zeke asked about the glowing contents, but the arrogant official just glared fiercely and barked at him to get lost. Zeke scowled totally over this timeline's trashy attitudes. Before he could unleash a comeback, a Hyper Rangus sprinted over, hyping up his absolutely godly performance. Flashing a cocky grin, Zeke played off the epic flex as nothing before asking about the glowing liquid. Rangus revealed it was an elite elixir from the legendary Eldragon clan. Zeke slowly repeated the name. Rangus eagerly nodded. Given his chaotic family drama, Zeke briefly suspected a toxic assassination plot, but his absolute trust in Rangus won out. He figured this actually was a top-tier spiritual buff. This divine brew was strictly crafted from insanely premium, ultra-rare drops. The formula demanded mythical herbs harvested strictly from completely uncharted, deadly hidden realms. It was heavily supercharged with the raw essence of phantom and divine-tier beasts. This ultimate cheat item could instantly wipe away chronic damage while permanently buffing the user's base stats. Its insane crafting difficulty made it virtually mythical. Chugging the sap, Zeke was absolutely blown away by its explosive instant recovery burst. He questioned if this was genuine spiritual medicine. Rangus completely missed the ancient terminology, simply boasting their clan's elixirs dominated all others. Rangus then teasingly asked if the elite clan buff actually blew his mind. Zeke nodded, thrilled it instantly wiped out his brutal training fatigue and deep wounds, though he low-key noticed his mana core did not level up. Rangus claimed Zeke's monstrous talent was far more shocking. Zeke simply chuckled playfully, telling his bro to chill. Internally, Zeke marveled at how insanely alchemy and combat knowledge had evolved over the past 1,000 years. As Rangus continued hyping his raw power, Zeke fiercely declared his ultimate destiny was to claim the absolute peak of strength. Moments later, the proctor confirmed Retton's toxic squad also cleared the trial. Zeke fully expected that outcome from his rival. But when Rangus's number finally dropped, the dude was literally shaking. Swallowing his massive anxiety, Rangus pushed through the fear and awkwardly marched to the strike zone. Clueless about his buddy's stage fright, Zeke roared loudly, screaming at Rangus to awaken his inner beast. Flushing red Rangus frantically hushed him. Taking a massive breath, he grabbed his chosen weapon and locked into his battle stance. At the sharp signal, Rangus exploded forward, unleashing a desperate strike against the relic. Tragically, his weak slash lacked any real aura. A brutal fail. Desperate, he geared up for round 2. This time, his blade violently ricocheted off the impenetrable target. The massive recoil instantly shattered his footing, sending him crashing pathetically into the dirt. His grip shook violently, not from terror, but completely wrecked by the brutal rebound. Retton's squad erupted into toxic laughter. They ruthlessly trashed his father's legacy, demanding Rangus forfeit his dream. Shooting Zeke a punchable smirk, Retin mercilessly asked if this absolute loser was the genius he hyped up, constantly spitting insults. Locking eyes with deadly intent, Zeke coldly ordered the bully to shut his trash mouth. The proctor coldly reminded Rangus he had one final strike remaining. Drowning in intense humiliation and the toxic jeers of the audience, Rangus completely froze up. He just hung his head in shame. Suddenly, Zeke stomped over, fiercely questioning his bro's actions. He aggressively questioned why a natural spear wielder was tragically swinging a sword. Zeke fiercely grilled him for equipping completely mismatched gear and rushing a boss-level trial blind. Retin flashed an evil grin, thoroughly enjoying Zeke, brutally roasting his own friend's absolutely pathetic and totally doomed battle strategy. The toxic bullies erupted into hysterical laughter, labeling Zeke a complete clown. They brutally trash-talked that Rangus strictly swung a blade just because his washed-up father forced that useless style onto him. The haters scoffed, claiming a weapon swap meant nothing. Zeke tuned out their pathetic trash talk entirely. Pivoting around, he verified if a gear switch was legal. The proctor gave him the green light. Smirking with absolute confidence, Zeke declared Rangus had struck gold. Turning back, his intense gaze locked on, asking, "Do you trust me?" Flashbacks of every soul-crushing insult against his father flooded Rangus's mind. Gritting his teeth, a fierce, blazing defiance ignited within his eyes. Standing tall, Rangus roared his absolute faith. He would wage war wielding the spear. Following Zeke's lead, Rangus unveiled a painful family trauma about his father failing to breach the dragon's nest. That devastating defeat branded their bloodline with dishonor, reducing his dad to a mocked so-called fake dragon. Yet swallowing that toxic humiliation silently, his father sacrificed everything just to raise Rangus with pure devotion. That sacred memory forged a blood vow. He would awaken his true dragon lineage. Surging with epic resolve, he fiercely gripped the spear. Today, he'd obliterate those toxic rumors forever. A sword was utterly useless now. Instead, he gambled his entire destiny on Zeke's master plan. One fatal flaw remained: his spear mastery was literally zero. Catching that panic, Zeke pointed straight at an enchanted monolith. Zeke commanded him to erase all logic and just pierce that boulder with everything he had. Heavy doubt crept back in. That self-healing artifact was legendary for being completely indestructible. But Zeke possessed an undeniable game-changing aura. Having someone actually believe in his potential felt incredibly intoxicating. Smashing his lingering fears, Rangus went all in. Trusting Zeke fully, he finally unlocked absolute faith in his own hidden potential. Channeling his aura into the shaft, a monstrous foreign energy surged. Years of sword training never sparked such an insane explosive power output. The spear felt effortlessly natural. Unleashing a terrifying battle cry, Rangus struck the monolith with god-tier force. From the sidelines, the arrogant Retin cackled, convinced a mere weapon swap was a pathetic, useless gimmick. But the spear resonated with his very soul, becoming an extension of his body. Screaming purely on instinct, he thrusted forward with apocalyptic momentum. The blade absolutely obliterated the magical barrier, piercing clean through Retin's crew instantly dropped their jaws in absolute mind-bending horror. Even the stone-faced proctors gasped in pure awe. He hadn't just chipped the artifact, he entirely shattered its core. Zeke hyped him up wildly. Meanwhile, Rangus remained totally frozen, completely paralyzed by his own epic, newly awakened strength. The proctor's booming voice officially declared his victory. Still shell-shocked, Rangus blankly muttered, asking if he actually survived the nightmare. Flashing a signature grin, Zeke threw an arm around him, sealing the reality. An overwhelming tsunami of absolute euphoria consumed Rangus. Tackling Zeke into a massive hug, he chanted his victory endlessly. Retin's squad practically short-circuited in pure, undeniable denial. Screaming it was a glitch, Retin trembled with furious, blinding rage, violently rejecting Rangus's absolute dominance. The proctor loudly wrapped up the brutal exam phase, declaring the official induction ceremony would commence immediately, without delay. "Is that really it?" Zeke questioned. Rangus nodded, though his gut screamed that far deadlier trials were quietly lurking ahead. Deep within the dragon's nest right then, an ominous squad emerged from the pitch-black, suffocating shadows of the corridor. Entering the glaring light, the proctor proudly announced the supreme patriarch of the Eld Dragon bloodline, arriving to bless the rookies. Zeke locked his deadly gaze onto the boss. "Who's the ice-cold villain over there?" he whispered. Sweating buckets, Rangus choked out that it was the patriarch. Zeke kept poking, questioning why the guy carried such a frozen, totally soulless, murder-like glare. Panicking, Rangus slapped a hand over Zeke's mouth, desperately pleading for silence. Zeke gave a serious nod. As Rangus exhaled and let go, analyzing the elites, Zeke instantly tasted the monstrous aura radiating from the Eld Dragon executives. These were solid 6-star beasts and terrifying 7-star legends. Their stacked spiritual pressure actually impressed Zeke. The patriarch himself, Balsa Dragon, was an absolute freak of nature wielding an ultra-rare 8-star mastery. A millennia ago, that godly tier was practically a myth. Zeke mentally calculated how many modern monsters actually possessed that insane caliber. I seriously hate this guy's vibe, Zeke grumbled. While Rangus frantically shushed him, Zeke internally realized I never expected this tyrant was my actual biological father. A suffocating pitch-black miasma bled from Balsa, instantly crushing the room's atmosphere. Under an unbearable gravity-defying weight, the proctor desperately demanded absolute silence, warning that Master Balsa was preparing to address them. The powerhouse stepped up, his voice rumbling like thunder. He commanded the rookies to literally become the flesh and bone of their empire. Instantly, his spoken words amplified the room's crushing aura to a deadly level. While Zeke effortlessly brushed off the pressure, the surrounding cadets violently shivered in pure terror, literally gasping for oxygen under that oppressive god-tier weight. Zeke quickly spotted Rangus physically buckling under the intense spiritual gravity. It deeply puzzled Zeke how the Patriarch could mentally break people with just his passive aura. Furthermore, Zeke detected a raw, venomous hatred swirling violently within Baalsa's spiritual energy. That dark discovery only fueled Zeke's intense disgust for his own so-called father. As Balsa turned away, another mysterious figure stepped up instantly, grabbing everyone's total attention. Rocking bright blonde hair and a totally upbeat vibe, he shot Balsa a quick thanks. The Master is expecting absolute greatness from every single one of you. While Zeke mentally questioned this newcomer's identity, the blonde dude kept it brief. No boring lectures here, just a simple command grind, hard level up and become beasts. An examiner blinked, stunned by the rapid-fire wrap-up. The blonde guy just smirked, joking that dragged-out speeches only trigger massive anxiety. These Eldragon elites were seriously eccentric, Zeke noted. Still, that suffocating heavy tension completely vanished from the room. The examiner's voice boomed, dropping the highly anticipated dorm assignments. Zeke turned, wondering if their entire crew would end up crashing in the exact same spot. Rangus explained the setup. 4 distinct dormitories existed, east, west, south, and north. Fate scattered the rookies across those 4 sectors. Hearing his number echo, Zeke hopped up, tossing Rangus a super-casual wave goodbye. East Hall was his new turf. Strolling down the corridors, nostalgia hit him hard. A crazy amount of stuff had evolved over his 1,000-year absence. Finally tracking down his door, he muttered about the confusing layout. His new roommate was definitely already chilling inside. Pushing the heavy oak door open, he flashed a welcoming bright smile at his mystery roommate. He smoothly apologized for his delay, announcing they were officially bunkmates from this moment forward. Plot twist of the century. Sitting right there was freaking Rangus. A genuine burst of laughter exploded from Zeke's chest. Destiny was practically trolling them at this point. Chuckling, Zeke casually asked if the Academy had any more brutal events scheduled for today. Rangus confirmed the real hellish training kicked off tomorrow morning. Zeke just shrugged, faking total absolute boredom. Rangus stared totally dumbfounded. Did Zeke tune out the examiner completely? Without missing a beat, Zeke shamelessly confessed he hadn't listened to a single word. Sighing heavily, Rangus pushed for an early curfew before tomorrow's brutal grind. Hours later, bathed in moonlight, Zeke stared deeply out his dorm window. His mind drifted to his ultimate goal, ditching this elite family to explore the vast world. Yet the exam's wild reveals changed everything. That miraculous healing stone, and that overpowered potion, they hinted at mind-blowing secrets he never saw coming. To unravel this massive 1,000-year mystery, playing along and staying with the Bloodline temporarily wasn't just smart, it was totally necessary. Bam! One brutal month instantly vanished. The Academy's daily grind escalated into pure, unadulterated torture. Rookies were now forced to execute flawless forms while gripping insanely heavy iron dumbbells. A hardcore instructor barked orders hyping up the legendary Dragon's Breath technique, the absolute masterpiece, crafted by the 15th Patriarch himself. Absolute mastery was non-negotiable. Yet mid-speech, the instructor's stern eyes locked onto a handful of absolute prodigies crushing the exercise. One standout was the fierce Master Lika. She had already conquered the breathing technique effortlessly. Her blazing aura practically screamed she was nearing a major power-up. But then another crazy sight hijacked the instructor's vision, leaving him utterly speechless. It was freaking Zeke. He wasn't just gripping dumbbells. He was casually balancing massive boulders on his head and limbs. Trembling, the stunned instructor whispered that Zeke definitely possessed the terrifying pure blood of the Patriarch. But wait, Zeke had zero formal training on record. This absurd raw power defied all logic. Honestly, even Zeke was internally tripping out right now. His ancient technique had supposedly evolved. Now, this modified version was being freely taught to every single lower branch member. He knew the core truth-breathing techniques literally inhaled the world's raw mana to forge superhuman strength. Efficiency heavily relied on pure genetic talent. That's exactly why elite bloodlines fiercely guarded these sacred arts from commoners. Scanning the rookies, Zeke realized this modern version was incredibly safe and idiot-proof. However, it harbored one massive fatal weakness. It strictly required standing totally still. For him, that made it absolute useless garbage. His original 1,000-year-old method continuously absorbed power during high-speed movement. It was devastatingly lethal in live combat, but notoriously impossible to master. Someone clearly dumbed down his legendary art for mass consumption, yet he grudgingly admitted this downgrade massively boosted the entire clan's baseline power. A weird, warm wave of pride washed over him. Who knew the casual skills he invented a millennium ago would become their modern foundation? Did his other god-tier techniques secretly survive the test of time too? A wicked little smirk crept onto his face. Fascinating, he whispered. Meanwhile, from the shadows, Lika's intense gaze locked fiercely onto him. Cut to the chaotic cafeteria, jaws were literally dropping. The surrounding students watched in sheer horror at Zeke's monstrous appetite. While demolishing his mountain of food, he spotted Rangus slumped across the table, barely touching his own plate. Zeke questioned his depressed vibe, declaring that true power requires crazy calories. Rangus merely hit him with a deadpan counter-question. Wasn't Zeke remotely weirded out by his own freakish stamina? Zeke just scoffed. Getting buff was simple math, just inhale more food. He urged Rangus to grind harder and break his limits, shoving a massive drumstick his way. Rangus instantly declined, claiming he was completely stuffed. Munching away, Zeke pondered how some rookies flexed such insane combat foundations before even stepping foot on this campus. Suddenly, a confident presence approached their messy table. It was the prodigy Lika. Staring him down, she boldly praised his insane performance. Dripping with absolute confidence, she spoke, but Zeke just blinked. "Who are you?" he deadpanned, making Rangus literally choke on his lunch. "Are you insane?" Rangus hissed in pure panic. "How do you not recognize her? That is Master Lika, the Patriarch's own flesh and blood." Zeke simply shrugged, entirely unbothered. Still drawing a blank, cold sweat drenched Rangus, begging Zeke to drop the casual attitude. "She is literally the prime candidate to inherit the entire clan," he stressed. Unfazed, Zeke dropped a bombshell. "I am the Patriarch's kid too, even if I am illegitimate." Rangus absolutely froze, mind short-circuiting. Lika, however, suddenly stared at Zeke with undeniable intrigue. Her gaze sharpened. "Is that a fact?" she demanded. "Are you truly the Patriarch's hidden bloodline?" This was Lika Typhoon Eldragon, a generational prodigy destined to rule the Empire. "Why would I fake that?" Zeke scoffed. Lika leaned in, close eyes narrowing. Then how did a mere illegitimate outcast shatter an awakened magic stone using just bare fists? She analyzed him, baffled by such monstrous power from a lowly branch. "Because I am me," he stated effortlessly, immediately turning back to his meal. "Eat up, Rangus." For a tense second, absolute dead silence swallowed the table. Then a wicked smirk curled across Lika's lips. "You are wildly fascinating," she purred, gracefully claiming the empty seat right beside him. Without hesitation, she offered him an exclusive spot as her personal vanguard. Zeke arched a singular brow, silently questioning her angle. "Join my faction," she declared boldly. "Swear your absolute loyalty to me, and I will become your ultimate shield." She smirked, adding that every bastard child desperately requires elite backing. "Lend me your monstrous strength to claim the Patriarch's throne," she commanded. "Once I inevitably seize absolute control of the clan, I will grant your wildest ambitions." Without missing a single beat, Zeke shut her down. "No." Lika's smug facade instantly cracked. Her brows knit in pure frustration. "Why reject me? Are you foolish enough to covet the throne yourself?" As she interrogated him, a suffocating aura began violently sparking around her body. Zeke easily sensed she was standing on the absolute brink of awakening, a terrifying feat for her age, yet Zeke didn't even flinch. He just sighed. "Believe whatever crazy theory you want, but I literally could not care less about fancy titles or thrones." Lika's tone dropped to absolute zero. "Why?" she demanded. Bam! Zeke suddenly slammed his blade deep into the wooden table, making Lika visibly flinch. Looking dead into her eyes, he declared, with undeniable absolute certainty, "I bow to absolutely no one." He leaned in. "Because I am already the strongest existence alive." The crowded hall went absolutely dead. Even the prodigy, Lika, stood paralyzed, struggling to comprehend the terrifying wave of aura erupting from him. For one brief second, his monstrous presence utterly crushed her spirit. Panicking, Rangus desperately jumped between them, begging for peace. But Lika's pride was shattered. Burning with utter humiliation and blinding rage, she viciously demanded a formal duel. Zeke, completely unfazed by her murderous glare, simply ignored her. He casually kept chewing his meal like nothing had even happened. The academy instantly exploded with wild rumors. Crowds of students frantically whispered that the elite Master Lika was marching toward the arena for a brutal deathmatch. Bystanders gasped in sheer disbelief, desperately wondering what kind of absolute lunatic was suicidal enough to provoke the legendary Typhoon bloodline. As everyone swarmed the training arena, the electric atmosphere violently buzzed with endless gossip, desperately trying to identify her mystery victim. Meanwhile, Zeke sighed, genuinely baffled that this crazy girl was actually forcing a fight. Are you actually doing this? Rangus practically cried, reminding him he was facing a literal monster. Zeke just blankly stared back, repeating he had zero clue who she was. Rangus aggressively facepalmed, begging Zeke to show basic respect since they shared the Patriarch's blood. As Zeke totally ignored the warning, Rangus aggressively grabbed him, demanding he actually respect his terrifying opponent's background. She is the Patriarch's ultimate masterpiece, Rangus yelled. She literally possesses the sacred, terrifying blood of the legendary Typhoon clan, one of the 4 supreme pillars. He hyped her up as a peerless prodigy who flawlessly conquered their lethal secret sword arts when she was practically a toddler. Zeke just tilted his head, utterly lost. So she is the boss's kid. That is all I got. Rangus's jaw completely unhinged. How do you survive being this oblivious? He shrieked. Zeke just gave a lazy half-smile, replying honestly. Stop stressing over minor details, man. Rangus stood totally paralyzed, his brain entirely broken. Then completely out of nowhere, Zeke chuckled darkly. A feral grin stretched across his face. Going in totally blind, that just makes crushing them 10 times more thrilling. Rangus slumped over his soul, leaving his body. In his mind, Zeke's crazy strength meant nothing against Lika's god-tier status. Why even accept this suicide mission, he groaned. Zeke's eyes flashed with pure combat lust. I never dodge a battle. Plus, my prey looks eager to start. Across the dirt, Lika stood like an absolute warlord, her heavy blade stabbed into the earth. Terrifying arcs of lethal blue lightning violently exploded around her body. Are you finally done making excuses? She spat with freezing malice. Tapping her hilt, she impatiently demanded they begin. Directly facing her raging storm, Zeke just nodded, perfectly relaxed. Totally consumed by sheer terror, Rangus scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet before sprinting for his life. Just do not die, his desperate scream echoed backward. Zeke shifted his gaze to Lika, his eyes flashing with genuine curiosity. He questioned why she was so obsessed with taking him down. Standing tall, Lika let her fierce ambition roar. She declared her ultimate goal was claiming the throne of the L-Dragon bloodline. To secure that crown, she needed to crush Zeke and force his absolute loyalty. Honestly, this wild claim left Zeke totally baffled. How exactly would beating him secure her that massive power? Lika just stared back, her face twisted in pure, utter disbelief. She scoffed, demanding if he was seriously this clueless about their bleeding family empire. She sneered openly, questioning if his blind ignorance stemmed from being some lowly, illegitimate outcast. Unfazed Zeke flatly denied her harsh claim. He coolly confessed his understanding of their toxic bloodline drama was practically zero. Seeing his genuine cluelessness, Lika broke it down. She revealed that exactly 5 chosen heirs, counting themselves, were currently locked in this war. They were battling for absolute supremacy. She added that every single sibling minus him held deep ties to the 4 legendary main branches. The Patriarch title held such terrifying authority that it sparked a ruthless all-out war between these massive factions. To survive her monstrous brothers in this bloodbath, she desperately craved elite heavy hitters. Zeke instantly realized this massive, messy faction war was tearing the legendary branches apart. The whole chaotic mess screamed absolute headache, and he wanted absolutely zero part in it. Lika pushed on, declaring an heir must massively scale up both raw combat stats and political dominance by hoarding loyal pawns. Zero hesitation. She suddenly exploded forward, rushing Zeke like a roaring missile. She screamed she would shatter his pride right now and forcefully drag him into her loyal army. Yet moving like actual water, Zeke casually drifted past her devastating slash. He flawlessly ghosted through her explosive combo of rapid-fire attacks. But Lika burned with absolute savage determination, refusing to drop her wild, suffocating pressure. The scattered bystanders just stared in absolute jaw-dropping shock. Their eyes completely failed to track the blazing blurs, stunned by their god-tier agility. Lika swung her massive monster blade with a terrifying elegance, making steel look like paper. Her lethal strikes chained together flawlessly in this brutal sibling clash. Whispers of pure hype ripped through the stunned crowd. Witnessing her aura flare and speed explode, everyone basically bet their lives on her guaranteed win. But behind the flashy hype, a toxic rage was rapidly boiling inside Lika. Her mind spun, totally unable to grasp why. Zeke kept ghosting through her picture-perfect kill shots like it was child's play. A sickening, maddening realization began clawing at her sanity. He was completely mocking her from the shadows. Meanwhile, the pure panic of Rangus rapidly morphed into absolute wide-eyed fanboy hype. The chilled, flawless footwork of Zeke blew his absolute mind. Breaking the silence, Zeke noted her combat rhythm was beautifully unique. He praised her insane velocity, admitting she totally outclassed standard scrubs at her current rank. Pissed off, Lika barked at him to shut up and respect the damn duel. Zeke merely tightened his grip, dangerous aura sparking down his muscles. He coldly whispered he was totally locked in. He casually added that extreme tunnel vision let him deliver absolute devastation without breaking a sweat. Bam! His savage fist connected flawlessly. The brutal shockwave literally ripped the oxygen from her chest, making her choke hard. She instantly crumbled down to the cold dirt, gripping her blade weakly while tightly hugging her screaming core as raw agony paralyzed her entire nervous system. The whole audience sucked in terrified breaths, exploding into wild murmurs. They frantically questioned how Zeke dodged that terrifying barrage, and what monster lurked inside this nameless kid. Shaking, Lika forced herself upright, deeply rattled. She absolutely knew her speed destroyed basic scrubs. In her tear, screaming to know his secret cheat code, Zeke smoothly agreed her insane agility easily shattered every record he knew. But then he ruthlessly dropped reality. To his god-tier eyes, she remained a basic one-star novice. Lika fiercely snarled. He was also ranked 1-star, meaning he had absolutely zero right tracking her. Unbothered, Zeke smoothly revealed the basic trick behind downloading her entire combat pattern, reading her panicked breath, twitching pupils, and the micro-tension in her calves. By deeply analyzing those pathetic little tells, he smirked. He completely mapped her future strikes. Pure veteran combat experience. Losing her goddamn mind, Lika shrieked. He was totally bluffing, and blindly fired a desperate supersonic death, yet Zeke, radiating pure disrespect, merely swayed safely out of danger. Flashing a cocky smirk, he whispered that her entire soul was basically an open book. Without a single fraction of hesitation, he punished her with a catastrophic counterhook. The kinetic blast literally launched Lika, flying into the solid concrete boundary. Absolute panicked shrieks ripped from the terrified peanut gallery. Had the unstoppable prodigy actually been crushed, Rangus totally lost his mind, screaming. Celebrating the crazy upset, Zeke, however, kept his icy vibe and sharply corrected the hype, warning this boss battle was still breathing. This bloody dance was just starting. As the dense rubble cleared, Lika dragged her battered body upward, bleeding but radiating absolute defiance. Zeke instantly recognized her stubborn, unbreakable aura. He realized she instinctively burned her core aura as a shield, completely tanking the lethal damage of his fatal blow. A dangerous smirk curved his lips as he finally gave her respect. This girl was an absolute generational monster. Rangus frantically begged Lika to stop the bloodbath, but Zeke coldly ordered him to step back. "You will get caught in the crossfire," he warned. Suddenly, Zeke's eyes blew wide open. A monstrous wave of energy erupted from Lika's core. Had she just broken through to the 2-star realm? The crowd gasped in pure shock. A radiant crest bloomed across her skin like magic. The absolute proof of a 2-star awakening. A blinding pure white aura completely engulfed her. This pivotal stage lets warriors infuse raw mana into their strikes, manifesting as a visible, deadly aura. Lika's eyes flared with newfound dominance. "Thanks to you, I have ascended to 2-star, she gloated. Way earlier than planned. Her icy glare locked onto him. With this insane power surge, she swore his defeat was absolute. Her white aura roared as she lunged her greatsword, dripping with deadly energy. Zeke didn't even blink. Instead, a crazed, thrilled laugh escaped him. "You have actually leveled up." Pure adrenaline rushed through his veins. He smoothly sidestepped her blinding combo, totally hyped by her insane speed. Suddenly, his smirk vanished. A razor-sharp sting sliced his cheek, leaving a warm trail of fresh blood. Zeke was stunned. He perfectly dodged that. A vicious, triumphant grin stretched across Lika's face. "Starting to feel the massive gap between us," she taunted. She proudly announced. This was her ultimate form, unlocked only by conquering the 2-star realm and manifesting her aura. He was about to taste the legendary Thunder Greatsword. Zeke's psychotic grin only grew wider. Witnessing an unseen martial art firsthand, he was absolutely buzzing with hype. His eyes practically glowed. This clash was rapidly turning into the most epic, blood-pumping moment of the entire duel. Lika exploded into motion. Crackling golden lightning devoured her blade as she blitzed forward, blinding the entire arena. The savage electrical storm blasted Zeke out of nowhere, sending him staggering. "Totally blindsided," he yelled in pure shock. "What kind of broken lightning technique is that?" Talk about overkill for a practice spar. Lika just smirked, slamming her massive blade into the earth. Drenched in golden static, she soaked in his panic and began charging her next devastating move. She screamed her attack name. A lethal glowing spiderweb of high-voltage electricity erupted from beneath, hunting Zeke down, but he flawlessly backflipped to safety. Hitting the ground, Zeke realized her power scaling was off the charts. This was going to be an intense boss fight. The crowd buzzed wildly. Lika's awakening had completely flipped the script. Rangus was sweating bullets. However, Zeke noticed her core footwork remained basically identical. Her strikes were basic, yet every swing unleashed catastrophic force. That golden lightning was absolute nightmare fuel. Even her speed was insane now. This strange lightning felt ancient, totally different from any standard magic. Still, Zeke fiercely believed he could counter her. Her bizarre elemental energy only fueled his curiosity. Weaving through her non-stop barrage, Zeke activated his combat brain. He ruthlessly dissected her attack patterns. Lika scowled at Zeke's cocky, effortless dodging. "You are way too chill for someone about to die." She rushed him again, a literal golden comet. Igniting a hidden art, she became a lightning bolt and slashed. Zeke barely ghosted past the blade. Her speed was literally matching the speed of true lightning. But she brutally faked him out, shifting her trajectory. This time, cold steel made devastating contact. The crushing impact launched him like a missile into a massive dust cloud. Rengus panicked, rushing forward, but a bystander restrained him. As the smoke cleared, Zeke dragged himself up. His gear was scorched, but his battle spirit burned brighter. Lika struck again, landing a direct point-blank lightning blast. Incredibly, Zeke tanked it. Lika's jaw dropped at his monstrous, freakish durability. Rengus snapped, sprinting onto the battlefield. He screamed for mercy, crying that she had already proven her total dominance. Lika shot him a death glare. Holding back disrespects his warrior pride, Rengus frantically begged Zeke to forfeit. "Beg on your knees and swear loyalty to live," Lika demanded. Zeke merely flashed a devilish, arrogant grin. Staying totally silent, her eyes turned murderous. Still keeping that pathetic Lorigan pride, she sneered, raising her massive blade. Her aura violently expanded. She vowed to completely annihilate him with one final full-power strike. Unleashing her forbidden art, Heaven's Thunder, the sky ripped open. A gargantuan pillar of golden judgment struck from the heavens. The apocalyptic impact vaporized the arena floor around Zeke. Endless thunderbolts rained down like a deadly golden meteor shower. Pounding the barrier, Rengus shrieked in absolute horror. He stood utterly paralyzed, watching helplessly, as blinding golden lightning swallowed his buddy. Scorching smoke billowed upward. Lika slammed her sizzling blade down. The brutal clash seemed totally finished. Exhaling heavily, she whispered with undeniable pity that the duel concluded. Suddenly, a chillingly smooth voice echoed, "Is that a fact?" A terrifying golden electric aura exploded directly from Zeke's crumpled form. Lika whipped around, jaw completely dropped. She desperately stuttered out, "Impossible," demanding how he unlocked an electric aura. Piercing the haze, Zeke stood grinning effortlessly. Radiant voltage cracked everywhere. Playfully questioning if this counted as lightning, he simply shrugged openly, admitting he cluelessly stumbled upon it. His chilled attitude sent absolute shockwaves across the speechless audience. Lika breathlessly muttered "impossible" once more, completely failing to process reality. Smirking sharply, Zeke revealed he intentionally tanked her devastating blows to analyze her unique voltage. Somehow, he literally copied her signature power. Enraged, Lika snarled that his bluff was totally ridiculous. Zeke mentally reviewed the crazy clash. He purposely absorbed hits just to decipher her legendary electric style. Throughout the beating, he flawlessly maintained his secret breathing rhythm. That precise breathing method, perfectly synced with her voltage, violently forcing pure golden mana to overflow inside his core. Instantly, he easily commanded the exact electricity that previously scorched him. He suddenly theorized that perhaps Lika possessed an insanely rare physique. Her clan's sword technique strongly proved her entire bloodline, naturally commanded absolute electric dominance. Oozing pure confidence, Zeke strolled forward. He openly confessed that her raw electric firepower totally blew his mind. Grinning fiercely, he called this deathmatch excellent practice. He genuinely thanked her, shockingly, revealing his sudden 2-star breakthrough. As blinding gold voltage erupted, he boldly announced round 2. Howling in pure rage, Lika recklessly dashed forward, slashing her glowing blade furiously. Zeke flawlessly sidestepped her frenzy, preparing a brutal counter. However, mid-step, he literally teleported in a blinding flash, manifesting across the battlefield. Totally stunned, he questioned his own movement. He quickly grasped that absorbing immense energy massively upgraded his muscles. This new electric aura literally mutated him. Realizing this insane voltage granted godlike agility, he quietly confessed he absolutely lacked control over this insane speed. Watching from the stands, Rengus remained paralyzed. Their godlike velocity rendered them completely invisible to mortal eyes. Both warriors became chaotic streaks of golden neon. Rengus suddenly realized Lika continuously missed her elusive target, boiling with fury. Lika furiously screamed at Zeke to quit playing games. Zeke chillingly denied it casually, confirming she remained genuinely dangerous. Launching forward with blinding velocity, he unleashed a heavy kick. She frantically guarded, but the sheer impact sent her flying. That massive strike forced her clumsily backward. Smirking darkly, Zeke casually announced the grand finale. Lika nervously echoed his chilling threat. Zeke confidently confirmed his deadly intention, excitedly revealing a totally fresh combat move he mentally crafted. She mumbled his claim in absolute denial. Nodding intensely, he internally debated what epic title this finisher deserved. Lika stood totally baffled by his mid-battle brainstorming. She desperately questioned who taught him such insane disrespect. Before she could even blink, Zeke materialized instantly beside her. Intense golden energy violently condensed into his palm. He fiercely roared his ultimate move, Dragon Destruction Combat Arts Special Form Lightning Peak. The devastating blast landed perfectly, trapping her inside a raging golden hurricane. Her entire frame violently convulsed under pressure. Her heavy blade slipped away as she collapsed onto trembling knees, fierce static continuously zapping her exhausted body. Dead silence completely consumed the entire stadium. Every single jaw dropped. Zeke achieved absolute victory. Laika remained utterly crushed. She gasped raggedly, trauma slowly settling in. Groaning painfully, she clumsily pushed upward. Her battered muscles still twitched violently. Her total defeat felt completely impossible. She bitterly remembered carrying the heavy destiny as her clan's future leader. Swearing she absolutely refused to fail again, a dark resentment brewed inside. Meanwhile, Zeke casually strolled closer, warmly extending a hand to lift her. He sincerely praised her insanely impressive strength, claiming he fiercely loved learning new skills. He called the chaotic brawl completely worthwhile. Flashing a grin, he demanded a future rematch, insisting stopping now would suck. Laika completely froze, cheeks burning bright crimson, staring at his palm. Despite her humiliating loss, a weird joy fluttered inside. Perhaps it sparked from genuine warrior pride or deep admiration. Zeke hyped up their next epic showdown instantly. Smiling brightly, he openly craved their future bloodbath. Feeling slightly bashful, Laika firmly gripped his offered hand, finally admitting his superior strength and accepting defeat. Sometime later, within a wildly chaotic realm miles away, a dimensional rift pulsed with volatile energy. Inside stood Balsa Eldragon, the formidable patriarch and father to Lika and Zeke. A massive horde of bloodthirsty beasts boxed him in. These grotesque monstrosities lunged forward with pure savage intent. Balsa's eyes flared with a scorching golden brilliance. Without flinching, he unleashed a devastating shockwave of aura, a crushing draconic pressure that paralyzed the entire horde instantly. With a lethal metallic whisper, he unsheathed his blade, taking his stance. Initiating the Dragon Destruction combat arts, he unleashed a single, flawless slash. In a flash, every beast surrounding him was cleaved cleanly in half. Crashing lifelessly to the dirt, he sheathed his weapon with terrifying composure. As dead silence fell, his elite soldiers charged from the sidelines, executing any monsters still twitching. The massacre complete, Balsa pivoted to exit the rift, but a sudden interruption halted his tracks. A frantic soldier yelled out bearing urgent intel. Pausing, Balsa coldly demanded the news. Taking a deep, shaky breath, the guard revealed Lady Lika had achieved the 2-star tier. Balsa instantly froze in his tracks, his overwhelming aura vanishing. The blazing light in his eyes faded. He replied with zero emotion, "So what?" Sweating bullets, the soldier stammered that hitting this milestone at 7 years old was legendary. Given her insane potential, she could smash the 5-star tier post-graduation. Balsa responded with pure ice, dismissing her raw talent as totally worthless, demanding intel strictly on her battlefield utility, not this pointless trivia. The soldier gulped, completely speechless, as the patriarch turned away. Panicking, the guard desperately blurted out that Lady Lika had actually just lost a duel. Balsa stopped dead, his unreadable face cloaked in shadows. In a dangerous growl, he asked if an older brother crushed her. The terrified soldier frantically shook his head. He confessed she was outclassed by her peer Lord Zeke. Balsa hissed the name Zeke like venom. Memories flashed of the boy's late mother, a simple maid. He recalled her brilliance in combat, tragically lost after giving birth. Balsa locked his piercing gaze onto the soldier, demanding fiercely to know who dared train Zeke. Trembling, the guard admitted the young lord had zero formal instruction. Zeke claimed victory purely on raw instinct, simultaneously breaking into the 2-star tier himself. "I see," Balsa murmured, with chilling detachment. Turning his back, he ruthlessly commanded the immediate start of the first blood trial. The soldier gasped. He protested the insane timing, since these rookies barely had a month of basic training and lacked preparation. Balsa viciously interrupted him. "Death offers no delays. Only the strongest survive tomorrow. Star tiers are totally worthless if they fail testing. Anyone failing this crucible deserves to lose our prestigious family name." The guard instantly submitted. Then Balsa dropped another bombshell command, demanding the immediate recall of the infamous Freya. The soldier froze, stammering to ask if he truly meant Freya, and the patriarch gave a slow, menacing nod. Confirming the nightmare, he declared Zeke's anomaly required Freya herself to engineer the bloodbath and personally spectate the carnage. The soldier bowed in absolute submission. For the first time in ages, a wicked smirk crept across Balsa's face. He whispered into the void that Zeke might just be his ultimate masterpiece. By dawn, at the Dragon's Nest arena, trainees were grinding through drills. Meanwhile, Zeke isolated himself, pushing his limits in solitude. Resting against the wall, he balanced a huge boulder on his head, gripping heavy weights. Rangus and the others watched, completely awestruck. Eyes shut tight, Zeke mentally deconstructed the Strike Dragon combat arts. It was a basic yet structurally flawless body conditioning method, perfect for rookies. Breaking the silence, Rangus asked why Zeke was skipping their group drills. Zeke casually dropped that he had already totally mastered their current technique. Rangus's jaw dropped in disbelief, questioning how anyone could speedrun that curriculum. Flashing a confident smirk, Zeke stated it was simply because he was built entirely different. Growing deadly serious, Zeke warned Rangus that his internal power was flowing backwards. Thoroughly confused, Rangus asked what he meant. Gently dropping the massive boulder with a muffled thud, Zeke ordered Rangus to turn his back. Pressing his palm against his classmate's spine, Zeke injected his own pure aura to forcibly realign the blocked mana pathways. Pulling away, Zeke nonchalantly stated that this was the flawless circulation route. Whipping around, Rangus beamed with immense gratitude, realizing Zeke was actually a masterclass prodigy. Zeke faked a dramatic scoff at his earlier skepticism. Panicking, Rangus swore he never doubted him for a second. Rubbing his neck sheepishly, he admitted that literally only his elite father had ever guided him like that, practically begging Zeke for more pointers. He assumed that since Zeke casually overpowered Lady Lika, these basic level 1 techniques must be incredibly boring for someone of his caliber. Zeke shook his head entirely, disagreeing. He actually respected its brutal simplicity and rock-solid foundation. It sparked intense nostalgia for his past life's martial path, a style his former disciples once considered impossibly punishing. The legendary Dragon Destruction combat arts was an insanely complex discipline, demanding absolute mastery over both flesh and spirit. It officially boasted 4 stances, yet Zeke instinctively forged a deadly 5th form while clashing with Lika. Beyond that lay a hidden ultimate strike he once used to slay a true dragon. Curiosity sparked regarding his other lost techniques. Across the ages, this thrilling thought made his blood boil. He resumed his solo grind, noting that a true warrior must walk their own path. Rangus suddenly cut in, begging Zeke for training to massively level up his strength. Zeke studied him silently. Then a slight smirk crossed his face as he casually agreed. Rangus stood completely shocked. Zeke just tilted his head, reminding the guy that he literally asked for this. Still stunned, Rangus admitted he expected rejection. Zeke firmly stated Rangus actually had potential. Suddenly, Lika approached them. Looking slightly hesitant, she actually requested Zeke's mentorship too. Rangus's jaw dropped at her unexpected plea. Lika coldly challenged his reaction. Dropping her ego, she confessed she once believed herself completely invincible among their generation. As the future heir, she admitted his brutal lightning mastery had entirely shattered her towering pride. Zeke chuckled, claiming total responsibility. Eyes burning with resolve, Lika swore to gain enough raw power to crush her own brothers. She then begged for his guidance. Zeke fell into a deep, calculating silence. The heavy tension lingered as he withheld his answer. Lika stared back, her eyes filled with obvious anxiety. She questioned if he really wanted this drama, perfectly aware his controversial bloodline made everything incredibly dangerous. Rangus nodded intensely. Being Balsa Eldragon's actual son automatically locked Zeke into the deadly succession war, regardless of his choice. Completely unfazed, Zeke brushed off their worries. He immediately flipped the script, questioning if her battered body could even handle training. He noted her brutal battle wounds required a full month of recovery. Flashing a cocky smirk, Lika told him to chill out. She had already chugged a high-tier healing potion. Zeke and Rangus exchanged a highly suspicious muted glance, muttering under their breath. They seriously doubted a basic entrance exam item possessed that kind of absurd miracle-working regeneration. Rangus guessed the heir naturally hoarded premium elixirs. Zeke exhaled in pure disbelief, marveling at this modern era's insane resource gap. Lika proved them right, confessing that without that elite stash, she would be bedridden for 30 agonizing days. Shifting back to business, her piercing gaze locked onto Zeke. She boldly demanded to know if he would actually forge her into a weapon. She craved absolute power under his mentorship. Zeke instantly accepted, a ghostly smirk gracing his lips. He claimed he never rejected hungry youth. This senior response completely baffled the duo, loudly reminding him they were literally the exact same age. A genuinely rare chuckle escaped Zeke's lips as he conceded. He playfully taunted Lika, questioning if she really wanted her conqueror-playing teacher, since he absolutely destroyed her in combat. She fiercely shot back that her bruised ego did not matter. Beggars could not be choosers. To claim the Eldragon throne, she swore to achieve overwhelming dominance through any ruthless method available. Intrigued by her fierce ambition, Zeke questioned the root of her absolute obsession. She grimly revealed that failing meant becoming a mere political pawn. The best-case scenario involved a forced marriage to a random cousin. At worst, she would be sold to a complete stranger. Zeke's face darkened instantly as pure, unadulterated rage ignited within his eyes. When he furiously demanded answers, Lika exposed the sickening truth behind the legendary Eldragon genetics. Their supernatural bloodline drove the clan into a twisted purity obsession. Rangus violently shivered. An apocalyptic pressure erupted from Zeke. With ice in his voice, he condemned the Eldragon clan's utterly repulsive, sickening practices. He crushed his fists together, vowing to completely obliterate these garbage traditions. Before his killing intent peaked, arriving elite instructors instantly shattered the heavy atmosphere. Lika questioned their sudden intrusion. Meanwhile, Zeke internally cursed, wondering if his treasonous outburst had been completely exposed. Stepping from the shadows, a blazing crimson-haired woman emerged. A faculty member proudly introduced her as their brand-new elite teacher. He demanded ultimate respect for her gracious personal guidance. The fiery-haired newcomer immediately stalked straight toward Lika. Flashing a deceptively sweet smile, she reached out to greet Lady Lika. Alarm bells screamed in Lika's head, forcing a desperate backward leap. Zeke instantly shielded her, while a terrified Rangus clung to his sleeve. The Crimson Woman's smile twisted into something sinister. She praised Lika's razor-sharp instincts and heavy aura, yet cold sweat dripped down Zeke's neck because he literally had not sensed her approach. Rangus frantically whispered, questioning her identity. The staff quickly formally announced her as Lady Freya. She grandly declared herself Freya Fiuk, of the legendary Black Dragon Corps, bowing gracefully before locking her predatory gaze onto Zeke. She questioned if he was the infamous Lord Zeke. He gave a stoic nod. Then the psychological warfare began. She mocked his reaction to her ghost-like entrance. Without flinching, he stated her tricks were incredibly basic. Freya completely froze. Her arrogant smirk vanished as golden energy flared within Zeke's eyes. He casually praised her unique shadow-walking footwork. Freya instantly realized why the Supreme Patriarch Balsa El Dragon obsessed over this monster. Unbothered, Zeke relentlessly analyzed her physical mechanics. He tracked her mana pooling uniquely into her lower body, completely erasing all friction and sound. A thrilling spark of battle-hungry excitement finally ignited in his gaze. While he analyzed her mysterious combat stance, Freya dominated the room boldly, declaring herself as their new combat instructor. Shocked murmurs ripped through the crowd. Everyone recognized Lady Freya, the Tempest Wind, as the ultimate powerhouse of their bloodline. A fellow trainer verified her insane status as a 6-star beast in the Black Dragon Corps, the legendary vanguard protecting the family head. Jaws dropped everywhere. Why would such a top-tier legend waste her time mentoring a bunch of rookies? A wicked smirk crossed Freya's face. She agreed to forge them into weapons, provided they survived one brutally simple trial. Panic swept through the terrified crowd, but she just smirked, telling them not to sweat it. Her ice-cold gaze swept the room. The trial, dead simple. Hunt down a crystal core and stay breathing for 30 days. Deep inside the notorious Poison Dragon Mountain, Rangus instantly lost all his color, yet a weird wave of nostalgia washed over Zeke. That cursed peak literally crawled with lethal venomous beasts. Shaking like a leaf, Rangus stammered out a terrifying fact. Brushing against a single blade of grass, there could instantly flatline an average guy. It was absolute nightmare fuel. Zeke remembered treating that death trap like his personal gym back in his past life. Still, he felt, tossing rookies into this meat grinder was insanely brutal. Freya coldly dropped the rules. Everyone receives a single crystal orb. Lose it or shatter it, and you are instantly eliminated. A shaking rookie raised his hand, stammering about the penalty for failing, and Freya shot back without blinking. Immediate expulsion. However, she casually mentioned that the toxic air was not their biggest problem. Master the dragon's breath technique perfectly, and their crystal orbs would actively shield them from the lethal miasma. Lika, ever the sharp one, called out the obvious threat of bloodthirsty beasts. Freya's glare turned predatory. She coldly declared, they had to slaughter those exact monsters for food or starve to death. Pure, unadulterated panic swept through the rookie ranks. Someone cried out that this was straight-up suicide, realizing their basic combat forms would not even scratch those mutated beasts. Out there. Freya just smirked. She tossed them a 5-day lifeline, allowing them to pick one fundamental weapon art from the vault. To master, she made it crystal clear. Unlocking this new combat skill was their only real ticket to surviving the massacre. Her dark smile instantly vanished. If you slack off and fail to grasp it in 5 days, your blood is not on my hands. Out there, a shaking kid squeaked out, asking if the teachers would rescue them when things got way too deadly. Freya unleashed a bone-chilling, sinister laugh. Welcome to the Dragon's Nest, the unforgiving territory of the legendary Eldragon bloodline. Weakness equals death here, she hissed. If you cannot butcher a few low-level beasts, just go become their peaceful midnight snack. Absolute terror gripped the crowd. Rangus looked ready to bawl his eyes out, while Lika stood completely frozen, calculating her odds. Zeke narrowed his eyes. He seriously questioned if this brutal clan was the same Eldragon family he remembered, because it felt entirely alien from his era as their supreme leader. Dismissing them, Freya started tossing out dusty combat manuals, ordering everyone to step up and claim their weapon styles. The panicked rookies eagerly swarmed the front, faces twisted with desperate hope and dread. Rangus totally froze, clueless about his choice. Zeke casually pushed him toward a spear manual, pointing out his solid spear work back during the brutal entrance trials. Rangus eagerly snatched it up, bowing in deep gratitude. Lika stepped up next, confidently declaring she wanted a greatsword style, banking on her previous mastery of its heavy foundational strikes. But Zeke instantly blocked her boldly, suggesting she master axe arts instead. When a confused Lika asked why, Zeke explained how the heavy axe would perfectly mask her fatal blind spots. Coming from a prodigy like Zeke, Lika dropped her doubts and firmly nodded. Trusting his tactical genius completely, Freya's sharp voice suddenly echoed, verifying if everyone had claimed their skill books. Seeing their choices, she warned them to grind like hell for the next 5 days, because awakening that specific combat art was literally their only shield against death. Fail to adapt, she snarled, and they would meet a horribly pathetic end, rotting on the cursed Poison Dragon Mountain. Halfway out the door, Freya suddenly froze. She slowly glanced back, dropping one final, devastating bombshell. The ruthless upperclassmen were officially hunting them for their crystals. Rangus gasped in pure horror. Freya coldly explained that the veteran students shared this deadly exam, but their literal main quest was hunting down rookies for their life-saving orbs. She mocked that. Sure, the terrified freshmen had strength in numbers, and the rugged terrain was massive, but those seasoned killers would use every dirty trick to slaughter them. Leaving that soul-crushing cliffhanger hanging, Freya vanished into the shadows. Rangus looked like he had seen a ghost. He totally panicked, crying out about how they were supposed to survive against rabid beasts and overpowered seniors. Lika scowled, her mind already racing. She knew those veteran fighters wildly outclassed them in pure strength, meaning a solo clash would lead to a rapid, brutal defeat for any freshman. Zeke simply nodded at her spot-on logic. He coolly advised her to build an elite squad if soloing was off the table, noting the rules never banned teaming up for survival. When a desperate Rangus asked for Zeke's master plan, he casually shrugged. He fully intended to fly solo and treat this nightmare like a vacation. Lika sighed, flashing a faint smile. She joked that his crazy confidence was perfectly on brand. Before diving into their hellish training, Zeke practically demanded they go feast first. Walking away, Lika nudged Rangus, whispering if he ever felt their friend was secretly built different, and Rangus nervously nodded in absolute agreement. Fast forward 5 intense days, the rookie class stood trembling before the massive, terrifying Poison Dragon Mountain. Heavy tension filled the air, a wild blend of suffocating dread and blazing resolve for the upcoming bloodbath. Freya stood tall, flashing a wickedly sharp grin as she declared the gloomy weather flawless for an execution. Rangus shuddered violently. The ultimate trial loomed closer. Rangus gripped his weapon, questioning if a nobody like him truly belonged beside the esteemed Lady Lika. Surrounded by elite aristocratic prodigies, her choice completely baffled his mind. After all, he was merely a low-born commoner, lacking any real aura. Without a single star to his name, suddenly, familiar voices shattered his spiraling doubts. Raymond and Celine stepped up to the plate, echoing his exact insecurities. Their eyes mirrored pure dread, mixed with desperate hope. Celine, an East Hall commoner, confessed her own absolute disbelief. Standing beside the radiant Lady Lika for this brutal survival game felt like an absolute fever dream. Raymond flashed a reassuring grin, his gaze locked on their noble leader. Catching their suffocating anxiety, Lika stepped forward. "Bloodline means nothing here," she declared. "I handpicked your raw potential." Her fierce conviction instantly shattered Rangus's lingering self-doubt. Burning resolve ignited his soul. Gripping his spear tightly, he locked eyes with her, swearing to never drag their squad down. Raymond chimed in fiercely, pledging to exceed her wildest expectations. Lika beamed with radiant warmth, entrusting the squad's fate to them. Her unshakable aura hyped up the entire team. Pivoting to Zeke, she questioned his insane solo-run strategy. Zeke merely flashed a cocky smirk, craving the impending bloodshed. Trembling slightly, Celine gazed in absolute awe at their fearless, boss-level energy. Raymond chalked up their swagger to pure aristocratic privilege, but Lika instantly shut that down. "I am terrified too," she confessed. Refusing to be grouped with that absolute madman, Zeke actually blinked, completely shocked by her hidden anxiety. "Why sweat it?" he scoffed, hyping up her hand-picked squad of hidden gems. But the entire crew fiercely protested, citing a million lethal reasons to panic over this deathmatch. Lika stared intensely at Zeke, questioning his actual faith in her recruits. He nodded instantly, secretly blown away by her insanely overpowered scouting abilities. This roster was straight fire. Her eye for hidden prodigies was unmatched. Zeke hyped their flawless team synergy, predicting an absolute walk in the park. Dripping cold sweat, Rangus called out his reckless ego. Suddenly, Freya's commanding voice sliced through their chatter, demanding absolute silence. Scanning the chaotic courtyard, she smirked at the freshly forged alliances standing before her. Teaming up was their only survival tactic, considering these rookies barely knew how to swing a blade properly. Stepping up, Freya triggered the countdown. She laid out the brutal, uncompromising rules of engagement. Goal 1, survive 30 agonizing days inside Poison Dragon Mountain. Goal 2, guard your crystal orb with your life. Lose it, you fail. Because every single artifact was identical, stealing a rival's orb was absolutely on the table. Pure panic rippled through the weaklings, but Zeke, a predatory gleam ignited within his terrifying gaze. It was basically a free-for-all hunting ground. Freya dropped another massive bombshell. Once the fresh meat entered the zone, elite upperclassmen would drop in as predators. The veteran students cackled wickedly, mocking the trembling rookies below. Harvesting artifacts from these pathetic newbies would be absolute child's play. Zeke's squad was paralyzed by creeping dread, adrenaline, and sheer terror. Wrapping up her sadistic briefing, Freya officially unleashed them to hunt. A thunderous battle cry shattered the tension. The mob of students charged blindly toward the menacing silhouette of Poison Dragon Mountain, fueled by desperate ambition. Before vanishing into the chaos, Lika demanded Zeke stay alive. He flashed a devilish grin, promising victory. Flipping the script and wishing her squad luck, eyes blazing with leadership, Lika commanded her vanguard forward. Delivering one final warning, Zeke prepped his solo dive. Freya locked onto him, declaring his launch time. Her tone dripping with intrigue, Zeke shrugged off her intense gaze, casually apologizing for the delay. Freya arched a highly skeptical eyebrow. Not even slightly terrified, she probed. Zeke countered with a chillingly calm smirk. He strolled into the abyss. Freya watched him, labeling the kid an absolute anomaly. Later that night, an anxious master approached the head examiner, sweating bullets over the rookie's survival rates. Freya feigned ignorance, tilting her head. He argued this hellish exam would absolutely obliterate mere beginners. A second veteran nodded grimly, pointing out these fragile novices barely possessed a few measly months of foundational academy training. They lacked single-star rankings, let alone actual life-or-death combat instincts. He honestly doubted any of them would return breathing. But Freya simply flashed a wicked, unbothered grin. She dismissed their panic, stating the mountain's toxic native beasts were nothing more than pathetic 1 or 2 star mobs, zero actual threat level, beaming like an angel. She promised total safety. However, under her breath, she maliciously plotted to unleash the ultimate hidden boss soon. Catching her dark whisper, the master demanded details. Freya simply smiled, brushing it off as absolutely nothing. Pivoting to the bloodthirsty seniors, she signaled the second wave, eyes flashing with predatory hunger. The veterans unsheathed their weapons and charged the peak. As their silhouettes vanished, a wicked gleam flashed across Freya's eyes. She whispered into the void, betting on who would actually make it out alive. A twisted smirk crept up her face. She was dying to see the carnage. Meanwhile, inside the pitch-black mountain, the seniors unleashed their ruthless hunt. A hawk-eyed senior instantly locked onto fresh prey. It was Zeke. The dude stood frozen at the mountain's base like a sitting duck, completely oblivious to the creeping danger. One senior scoffed hard, mocking the clueless freshman for lingering at the starting line, way behind the rest of the pack. Another senior skipped the trash talk, raising his heavy crossbow and locking onto his target. Swoosh. But before that lethal bolt could connect, Zeke's hand blurred. He snatched the deadly projectile right out of thin air. The seniors froze jaws, practically hitting the floor. Zeke casually snapped the wooden shaft in half. "Took you guys long enough," he smirked. One senior panicked, questioning his confidence. But the archer screamed to brush it off, terrified by that insane mid-air reflex. Zero hesitation. Zeke exploded forward, leaving only after images behind. A wild, primal thrill ignited within his glowing eyes. Flashing a devilish grin, he declared the real game had just begun. Elsewhere, Celine's squad clashed with savage beasts deep within Poison Dragon Mountain. Celine obliterated a massive mutated toad, watching its colossal body crash down. Suddenly, a second nightmare lunged straight from the pitch-black shadows, aiming straight for her blind spot. But Raymond was clutch. He dashed in, slamming his heavy shield to perfectly deflect the ambush. Following up with brutal force, he bashed the monster into the dirt, leaving the ugly beast completely stunned and vulnerable. Channeling pure grit, Raymond crushed the creature with a fatal shield strike. Wiping his sweat, a proud grin lit up his face. Relieved to catch Rangus absolutely destroying his own demonic opponent nearby. Suddenly, Lika's confident voice pierced the chaos, hyping up their flawless synergy. Rangus threw a grateful nod, but his jaw dropped when he spotted a literal mountain of slaughtered beasts. Lika had soloed an entire horde. Celine stood absolutely paralyzed by awe. She whispered, realizing Lika's insane combat power existed in an entirely different dimension. Raymond nodded in sheer disbelief. While they struggled with a few runts, Lika had practically wiped out the entire dungeon floor. Lika just brushed off the hype. Flaunting her 2-star warrior status, she claimed these low-level mobs were barely a light stretch. Still, she acknowledged their massive level-ups. Celine and Raymond had officially awakened as 1-star warriors packing serious new heat. Both rookies beamed with endless gratitude, fully aware that her hardcore mentoring unlocked their hidden potential. Rangus, however, stayed dead silent. Heavy insecurity crushed him. He was the only one without a star. Celine immediately caught his sinking vibe. Stepping up, Celine warmly promised his power-up arc was coming soon. Raymond threw his bro some major backup, urging him to trust the grind. That genuine squad loyalty hit Rangus right in the feels, forcing a grateful smile. Lika quickly shut down his doubts. She reminded everyone he just soloed 3 beasts using pure, starless, raw talent. Thanks to his brutal spear training sessions under Zeke, unlocking that first warrior star was literally just a matter of time. Soaking in her rock-solid faith, Rangus choked up, holding back literal tears of relief. Meanwhile, Lika scanned the fading horizon. Shadows were creeping in. She declared an instant tactical retreat back to base camp. Celine aggressively agreed, physically shuddering at the mountain's terrifying nighttime death rate. But halfway down the trail, Lika slammed on the brakes. The vibe instantly shifted. Rangus whispered, asking for a status check, but Lika stood frozen. Her gaze turned deadly, serious, piercing the gloom. "Why is someone lurking near our perimeter?" she muttered darkly. Seconds later, a creepy silhouette materialized from the overgrown weeds. The squad instantly panicked at the jump scare. Celine and Raymond ripped out their weapons, radiating pure killing intent. The mystery student casually strolled out, rocking a cocky smirk. "Nice radar, Lika," the arrogant senior mocked. She demanded if he was hunting their exam crystal. His yes confirmed their worst nightmare. They were prime targets. Worse, this guy was a 2-star powerhouse. Flexing hard, he bragged about his mission to farm freshman crystals, calling it a massive jackpot, stumbling onto Lika's elite squad. Unbothered, Lika fired back, daring him to solo her entire 4-man party. But that villainous smirk only stretched wider. He burst into maniacal laughter. "Whoever said I was rolling solo?" Boom, 3 more upperclassmen. All flashing 1-star auras stepped out from the shadows like predators. The alpha senior sneered, mocking Lika for carrying such deadweight teammates. Ripping his blade from its sheath, he roared at them to cough up the loot. He instantly blitzed Lika with a heavy strike, but she practically ghosted right past it. "Hold the line," she screamed, locking intense eyes on the raid boss. "He's mine." Meanwhile, Starless Rangus was getting absolutely destroyed on the flank. The enemy's relentless combos pinned him down in desperate survival mode. The senior cackled ruthlessly, demanding the noob just tap out. Rangus flinched, almost breaking. But then a core memory with Zeke flashed through his mind. He recalled asking the prodigy if an absolute underdog could ever topple a giant. He had poured out his worst fear, staying starless, and dragging his friends down against elite monsters. Zeke's answer had completely shattered his expectations. If they're a 3 or 4-star monster, just surrender and save yourself. A starless 0 fighting an awakened warrior, total suicide. But Zeke insisted survival was totally possible against a mere 1-star. When Rangus desperately questioned this logic, Zeke dropped a brutal truth bomb. The secret weapon, exploiting a single blind spot. A blind spot, Rangus echoed, completely lost. Zeke nodded deadpan. Crack their defensive shell and even a 2-star powerhouse falls. But how do you spot that flaw? Zeke's answer was chillingly simple. Survive. He ordered Rangus to turtle up completely, dragging the fight out until frustration breeds a fatal error. Rangus doubted it then, but Zeke swore by this method. Trash-tier fighters cannot shatter defenses by force. You literally have to bait them into digging their own graves. Zeke issued a harsh warning. Fail to tank the hits and you stay a loser forever. Sure, this trick flops against true prodigies, like the fierce Lika, but against some average 2-star mob, absolute perfection. He hammered home one core rule: trust your own hidden potential. Then Zeke delivered his ultimate game-changing tip. Stop overthinking the massive power gap, just endure the storm, and when that armor cracks, pierce them without mercy. Snapping back to the brutal reality of battle, Rangus gripped his weapon, Zeke's raw wisdom burning in his soul. The reality check hit hard. As the underdog, he had to swallow his pride, tank the damage, and hunt for that golden strike. The enemy lost his mind, his strikes turned dangerously sloppy, while Rangus flawlessly deflected everything. "Just die, already," the senior roared, launching a devastatingly reckless swing. Right then, time froze. Rangus spotted the glitch. The exact fatal flaw Zeke predicted, zero hesitation allowed. Rangus funneled every ounce of his burning willpower together. Roaring like a beast, he drove his spear violently through the senior's shattered guard. The bully choked on air, collapsing into a pathetic unconscious heap. As the giant fell, a blinding majestic aura erupted from Rangus's core. The legendary awakening sequence. He finally shattered his limits, birthing a 1-star core. Lika's jaw dropped in pure shock, instantly melting into fierce pride over her underdog teammate's epic victory. Meanwhile, the enemy boss stood completely paralyzed, his arrogant smirk shattered, his brain short-circuited. How was Lika utterly dominating him when they shared the exact same 2-star rank? But Lika held a secret. Thanks to Zeke's overpowered masterclass, she could inject insane amounts of explosive aura straight into her deadly blade. "Your biggest mistake was hunting my squad," she whispered coldly. Suddenly, crackling golden lightning violently swirled around her steel. "Game over," she declared, dropping her sword with a heaven-splitting shockwave. The boss crashed down instantly, wiped from the battlefield. Scanning the absolute wreckage for remaining threats, Lika rushed back to her battered squad, urgently checking their vitals. Confirming 0 casualties, an overwhelming wave of relief washed over them, erupting into victorious adrenaline-fueled cheers. They actually crushed their ruthless seniors. Celine and Raymond sprinted over, hyping up Rangus for his glorious 1-star evolution. He flashed a brilliant, exhausted smile. Lika gazed at her surviving crew with immense pride. With everyone fully awakened, she promised their next dungeons would be a total breeze. Suddenly, her fierce eyes softened. Where in the world was Zeke? Cut to the mountain's darkest nightmare zone. A terrified senior was sprinting for dear life. Sobbing hysterically, he frantically prayed. "Stay away, you absolute demon, Zeke," he sobbed, shivering violently in pure, unfiltered panic. Was that kid secretly a boss-level monster? The so-called elite seniors tore through the forest, howling pathetically for rescue. Their only prayer was outrunning the Grim Reaper. Behind them, Zeke casually dragged a completely pulverized senior. The hidden survivors watched, shaking with dread. What kind of freak was this freshman? Gripping a brutally slaughtered giant serpent, Zeke flashed a psychopathic smirk, teasingly asking, "Who else wants to join my little survival game? He is completely psycho." The seniors shrieked, scattering like frightened rats. This made zero sense. They were the deadly hunters, not the hunted prey, sprinting blindly. A panicked senior violently wiped out on the dirt, desperately scrambling upwards. His blood froze as he slowly locked eyes. With Zeke looming above like a nightmare, those demonic red eyes pierced his soul. Yawning over this boring game of tag, Zeke deceptively extended a friendly hand. But with a chilling grin, he promised a brutal duel the second he stood up. The senior's pupils shrank in utter despair. His brain simply shut off, fainting instantly into the mud. Zeke just tilted his head, visibly confused by this glitch. "Did I break him?" he whispered, scanning the dark woods for fresh victims. He loudly taunted the shadows. Why act so weak now? He ruthlessly roasted their fake tough guy energy from earlier, laughing as he begged them to keep entertaining him. Suddenly, his killer instinct spiked. An unknown aura lurked nearby, shifting his gaze. He dared the spy to step into the killing zone. Dead silence echoed back. Zeke let out a dark, amused chuckle. If they only wanted a show, he'd give them a bloody masterpiece. Shrugging it off, he loudly declared his warm-up was officially over. Ready to unleash hell. Suddenly, a mysterious figure emerged straight from the shadows, stepping perfectly into Zeke's absolute radar. Cold sweat drenched the exam proctor. He stared wide-eyed at the kid named Zeke. Total disbelief paralyzed him. This boy casually crushed seniors leagues above his level. Worse yet, the kid easily detected his perfectly concealed presence. Recognizing this insane threat level, the spy bolted to deliver an emergency report immediately. Back at base camp, Freya blinked in surprise as multiple scouts suddenly rushed inside. Week 1 was officially over. 30% of the rookies had already tapped out entirely. The survivors were finally adapting to the deadly peaks. Expecting zero future dropouts, Freya shifted focus to the elites. Dead silence filled the room. The scouts exchanged terrified glances. Freya's eyes narrowed, demanding the raw truth. One scout choked out the reality. The seniors were constantly fleeing. Freya scowled. Fleeing from what, exactly? Absolutely zero monsters in this zone possessed enough power to terrify those elite upperclassmen. A trembling scout confessed the crazy truth. They were not dodging beasts. They were escaping Lord Zeke. Freya tilted her head. Why him? Because Zeke was literally hunting the veterans for pure sport. Resistance proved completely useless. Running became their only survival tactic. Another spy shivered. Lord Zeke was actually enjoying this. He gleefully tracked them down like helpless livestock. Nobody had ever witnessed such pure dominance before. Even by the legendary Eldragon Bloodline standards, Zeke defied all logic. Calling him a prodigy was a massive understatement. He was a literal demon in a kid's body. Freya smirked. Her initial suspicions were absolutely spot on. Soloing the death zone without a single flinch, his zero-fear energy during entry screamed one undeniable fact. Playing defense was never his vibe. He claimed the apex predator role from second one. Recalling his deadpan gaze gave Freya actual chills. Suddenly, heavy vibrations violently rattled the entire command tent. A wicked smirk crept across Freya's face. Perfect timing. That is precisely what I requested. Guards hauled in a massive steel vault. Freya ordered them to drop the heavy cargo right there, nodding approvingly. Staring at the reinforced bars, the scouts' jaws literally dropped in pure, unadulterated horror. Suffocating pressure leaked from the crate. Was this nightmare fuel meant for students? Freya just laughed off their panic. The beast was strictly programmed. Its aggro only triggered against 2-star targets or higher-tier awakeners. Average rookies were completely safe from its lethal radar. Why unleash such an overpowered boss? Freya claimed Commander Balsa personally greenlit this insane difficulty spike. Secretly, though, she desperately needed to push this so-called kid monster to his absolute breaking point. Could Zeke actually survive a boss-level threat? Tomorrow at dawn, this savage beast drops straight into his hunting grounds. Deep inside Poison Dragon Mountain, massive earthquakes suddenly paralyzed Ranga and his entire battle squad. Lika's survival instincts screamed danger. Raymond guessed some elite senior was aggressively flexing their aura. Ranga suspected a heavyweight monster. Yet a suffocating dread kept twisting violently in Lika's gut. Boom. An earth-shattering shockwave ripped through the forest. A colossal ancient tree snapped nosediving straight toward their heads. Dodge, Lika shrieked. The squad desperately dive-rolled as explosive timber pulverized their exact previous coordinates. Dust cleared. Lika froze solid. Celine choked on her breath, terrified by the emerging nightmare. All color drained from Ranga's face as cold, paralyzing terror washed over him. "Run," he croaked out. A colossal stone golem towered above them, its demonic red eyes glowing menacingly. Miles away, Zeke chilled on a brutal throne built entirely from crushed seniors and defeated beasts. He exhaled, loudly, bored to death. 0 challengers remained. Absolute ghost town. Even the stealthy proctors had completely abandoned his assigned quadrant. Their auras vanished, basically granting him total immunity to run wild. Talk about a massive letdown for his hype. Suddenly, a savage mana pulse echoed from the opposite peak. He initially brushed it off as a 2-star mob. Wrong. That heavy pressure was definitely 3-star tier. He scowled. A boss-class entity absolutely violated this tutorial zone. Was this some dormant ancient beast finally waking up from a centuries-long slumber? The normal rookies would get absolutely slaughtered. Even a top-tier prodigy like Lika faced guaranteed annihilation against it. Admin completely botched their pre-exam threat sweep. But wait, a wildly different theory suddenly sparked. What if the Academy deliberately dropped this raid boss here as a secret trial? Whatever twisted scheme those instructors cooked up, a genuinely psychotic smirk finally stretched across his bored face. Absolute perfection. A fresh challenger finally appeared. The beast lurked miles away. Why was it keeping such massive distance? Whatever. Waiting around wasn't his style anyway. Smirking, he dashed straight toward the monster, daring the creature to hold its ground. Meanwhile, across the jagged mountain, Celine unleashed hell on the colossal golem. But her devastating strike completely bounced off. Total shock paralyzed her. That insane hit didn't leave a single scratch on its rocky armor. Raymond charged next, slamming his heavy shield with absolute maximum force. Yet just like Celine, his brutal impact did absolutely 0 damage. Sensing its monstrous defense, Lika stepped up. Sizzling golden aura and pure lightning instantly wrapped around her deadly blade. A blinding flash erupted, revealing a tiny dent on its arm. Boom, Lika figured it out. Only pure aura could pierce this tank, meaning only 2-star warriors like her stood a chance. Her 1-star squad simply lacked the raw firepower. Panicking, Rangus begged for a strategy. Stepping into absolute boss mode, Lika ordered the entire squad to follow her lead exactly. Her plan: flee the second she draws its deadly aggro. But Rangus instantly rejected that cowardly escape. Abandoning a comrade wasn't an option. Frustrated, Lika snapped back, warning them they would just become massive liabilities in this fight. Pointing at the beast's arm, she laid down the harsh truth. Even channeling her maximum explosive power, she barely chipped its insane armor. Being mere 1-star rookies, their weak attacks couldn't even tickle this towering nightmare. Raymond admitted their pathetic damage output. However, they could still play support, creating crucial openings for Lika's heavy-hitting strikes. Lika raised a confused eyebrow. Gripping his weapon, Rangus swore he would never drag her down. Celine backed him completely. Perfect teamwork and perfectly timed assists were their absolute golden ticket to victory. Feeling their unbreakable resolve and absolute trust washing over her, a soft, confident smirk crossed Lika's face. Acknowledging their burning spirit, she finally agreed. Instantly, Lika overloaded her razor-sharp blade with violently crackling high-voltage aura. Raymond locked his shield into position while Rangus and Celine primed their ultimate assist combo. Channeling max energy into her weapon, Lika roared the battle command to launch their epic high-stakes counterattack. Blurring like literal lightning, Lika dashed forward, trailing wild golden sparks, but the stone giant viciously swung back in a heartbeat. Raymond heroically slammed his shield upward. Sadly, his 1-star strength completely buckled under the Titan's earth-shattering brute force impact. Flanking hard, Rangus and Celine pulled off a flawless double distraction. Slipping into the monster's blind spot, Lika prepped her ultimate finisher. Unleashing her signature move, Heaven's Thunder, she mercilessly executed a devastating backstab with every ounce of her soul. A massive shockwave rocked the forest. That monumental strike brutally slammed the Titan into the dirt. As the dust settled, the surrounding battlefield lay in absolute ruins. A frantic Rangus sprinted over, desperately checking her vitals. Gasping for air, Lika confirmed she survived, but her mana pool was completely drained. Wait, where was Raymond? Coughing blood, Raymond leaned on Celine, confirming his survival. But just as Lika called for a tactical retreat, a bone-chilling dread froze her spine. The nightmare had instantly respawned behind them. Pure instinct took over, shoving Rangus aside just as giant stone claws violently snatched her up. Crushed inside its rocky grip, absolute disbelief washed over her. Lowering her guard after that ultimate attack was a fatal rookie mistake. Celine stood completely paralyzed. Surviving Lika's maximum level nuke, and still moving like that, defied all logic and reason. Screaming Rangus recklessly thrust his spear forward in a desperate last-ditch rescue mission. But the monster sadistically used Lika as a human meat shield, dodging every single strike. Madness and pure desperation completely consumed the panicking Rangus. Out of nowhere, a massive flying tree trunk practically broke the sound barrier. The catastrophic impact violently forced the beast to drop Lika. Yanking her to safety, Rangus dragged her back. A totally dazed Lika stared blankly, trying to process her miraculous, completely unexplainable escape. Suddenly, an arrogantly familiar voice shattered the tension. Zeke finally entered the chat, casually asking about the massive chaos. They instantly recognized that confident tone. Yet, completely ignoring Lika's near-death state, Zeke simply stared at the towering monster with absolute joy. His gamer eyes literally sparkled, mocking the terrifying boss as a mere clay toy. Golden lightning flashed as Zeke perfectly analyzed his prey. Spotting Lika's signature aura, he couldn't believe those noobs engaged the boss early. Cursing his current physical limits, he forced his legs to sprint faster. In his legendary past life, he'd literally teleport there. Now, he bitterly suffered through this agonizingly slow, low-level marathon run. Anxiety spiked for Lika's talented squad. Facing an overpowered raid boss, there was zero chance those rookies could survive much longer without him. Bam! An epic forgotten skill suddenly unlocked in his brain. Halting his sprint, he instantly locked his bare hands onto a colossal ancient tree. Flexing absolute god-tier strength, he violently uprooted the massive timber, channeling that newly recovered martial art. His muscles bulged with terrifying raw explosive power. He hurled the gigantic trunk like a literal javelin, turning it into a devastating high-speed missile. Smirking at his soaring wooden projectile, a dark satisfaction washed over Zeke. This brutal throwing mechanic perfectly suited his currently unawakened stats. Hooking him up with a crucial ranged arsenal, he instantly mentally scrolled through the exam's combat manuals, absorbing the core fundamentals of these lethal throwing techniques. They literally fit him like a glove. Being a legendary sniper in his previous life, wielding these fresh abilities felt like second nature, but that hype died instantly. He realized hiding behind one measly tree would never block an absolute tank of a monster. Adrenaline spiking, Zeke launched himself forward, sprinting full tilt toward Lika's squad. A totally beat-down Rangus just gaped his brain, short-circuiting at Zeke's insane entrance. Zeke's sharp voice sliced right through the chaotic battlefield, checking if his squad was still breathing. Rangus coughed up that they survived, but pointed at the massive rock boss. Zeke just tilted his head, echoing the word golem like it was some weird alien slang. Then, the colossal titan rose, rushing straight for our boy. Lika and Rangus absolutely lost it, screaming at him to dodge the incoming death trap. But Zeke, he just casually raised a single hand, effortlessly catching the titan's earth-shattering punch. He smirked at its solid armor. Figuring he would have to spam his aura just to scratch that rocky shell, he literally swatted the beast's massive fist away, and yawned that beating it the normal way would be a total snooze fest. Lika nearly passed out from his insane flex. Rangus was utterly speechless. His squad almost wiped to the same boss Zeke called boring. The titan, completely unfazed, wound up to crush Zeke into dust. Zeke's eyes finally flashed with ice-cold focus, just looking at its insane bulk. He knew this thing was a walking natural disaster, but backing down? Never. He just braced his arms to tank the hit. The clash was deafening, ripping through the earth and echoing across the entire forest. While locking the beast down, Zeke ordered his squad to fall back to the safe zone immediately. Without hesitating, Lika's battered crew scrambled away from the danger. The second they cleared out, Zeke channeled his raw power, unleashing a primal battle cry as he physically threw the colossal titan. Watching the beast completely demolish the tree line, he mentally calculated just how absurdly tanky its stone armor actually was. Packing lethal aura into his knuckles, he dashed forward with a downright demonic glare, loudly questioning if its guts were equally bulletproof. Launching himself skyward, he yelled that it was time for a vibe check. He then slammed into the beast with a devastating, fully charged energy hook, triggering a shockwave that obliterated the area. Zeke hated dragging out boss fights. It was way more optimal to absolutely nuke the monster, internally with one god-tier strike. His insane strategy worked flawlessly, riding a massive adrenaline high. He smirked, realizing this unhinged combat style was extremely fun. Fast forward 1 month, the grand headquarters of the elite Eldragon family was buzzing with its typical elite chaos. Zeke, however, was in a totally foul mood, super salty that someone paused his intense grinding session. Apparently, the brutal mountain trial had officially ended. Ever since the Titan raid, things stayed surprisingly chill. Thanks to the absolute bloodbath of an exam, only 30% of the 7-year-old rookies actually survived. Still facing constant danger, forced the leftover kids to level up insanely fast. With the trials wrapped, Zeke got heavily summoned by Balza Eldragon, the terrifying boss of the family. Strolling down an endless corridor, Zeke casually asked his escort Freya why the big leagues wanted him. Freya immediately cringed at his utterly disrespectful tone, barking at him to use proper honorifics, but Zeke literally just shrugged it off. Freya figured he was playing dumb, and snapped that he got called up entirely because of his unhinged exam stunts. Zeke actually looked genuinely clueless about it. Freya deadpanned that his attitude was the issue. She reminded him that a rookie like him totally demolished the senior elites, which completely broke the academy's power hierarchy. Rubbing her temples, she hissed that his stunt caused every single upperclassman to completely fail, and forced them to literally restart their trials. Zeke clapped back that it wasn't actually illegal, but Freya groaned that it was absolutely unprecedented. Freya just facepalmed with a heavy sigh. She spun around aggressively, warning him to drop the whole edgy rebel act. Before stepping through those doors, she practically begged him to fix his slang and manners, especially when facing the literal masterhead. Zeke just blinked, tilting his head with a blank Y. Freya desperately warned the kid that his trash-talking would get him speedrun to the grave. She was terrified his terrifying father Balza would instantly execute him. 0% stressed, Zeke just smirked, calling his dad a total psycho. They reached a massive door where Freya knocked with absolute precision. She strictly addressed the man inside as Master Head. Sweating bullets, she announced herself as Freya Wink of the legendary Black Dragon Corps, confirming she delivered the target as ordered. A soul-crushing bass-heavy voice commanded them to step inside. Trembling slightly, Freya pushed the massive gates, leading him into an overwhelmingly oppressive office. She instantly bowed, reporting that Zeke had been secured. Balza slowly paused his writing. His razor-sharp glare locked onto Zeke, demanding to know exactly why he jumped a senior during the trial. Breaking the heavy silence, Zeke sighed. He was totally sick of these repetitive questions. Dodging the interrogation entirely, he boldly asked his terrifying father if the rulebook explicitly banned fighting seniors during the trial. Balza coldly demanded an explanation. Zeke simply dropped the actual win condition. The mission was simple: survive for 1 month and guard that crystal orb. Zeke bluntly pointed out that no other rules existed. If his methods were banned, they should have said so from day one. Pure panic instantly gripped Freya. Hearing Zeke spit such reckless words made her blood run cold. She shrieked, totally losing her mind over him disrespecting the masterhead. Balsa locked his deadly gaze. Boom. A monstrous dragon aura suffocated the room. The crushing gravity slammed Freya straight to her knees. Ice filled her veins. This level of killing intent could literally erase Zeke from existence. But jaw-droppingly, our guy did not even flinch. That bone-crushing pressure meant nothing to him. Flexing his ultimate unbothered attitude, Zeke straight up told Balsa to drop the cheap scare tactics. He actually called it annoying. Balsa lost his mind, face-twisting with absolute rage. Meanwhile, with Freya still pinned to the floor, Zeke casually asked if he was summoned, just to waste time. Recovering his shock, Balsa fiercely demanded the truth. Playing dumb, Zeke asked for context. Balsa immediately brought up the combat reports. Obliterating an upperclassman and crushing a 3-star golem, he furiously demanded to know how this kid was shrugging off his legendary dragon aura. Voice dripping with suspicion, he questioned how a mere illegitimate child could suddenly possess such monstrous rule-breaking strength. Unbothered, Zeke looked his father dead in the eye. He asked if he seriously wanted the secret to his power, claiming it was simple. Smirking, he dropped the hardest line: "Because I am Zeke." Balsa fiercely scowled, absolutely triggered by the insane arrogance of that answer. Zeke fired back, a killer glare overflowing with absolute main character confidence. Finally, the heavy silence broke, and Balsa painfully admitted that his son was just as toxic as the rumors claimed. Still, he threw down a massive reward for wrecking that golem. The prize: loot from the Dragon Treasury, or a VIP pass to the 2nd floor of the Dragon Hall. Freya mentally blue-screened. These were hyper-sacred vaults. They guarded the absolute best-kept secrets and mythical loot of the Laragon bloodline, spanning over 1,000 years. The Dragon Hall was not just a library. It held an ocean of dangerously forbidden magic. Meanwhile, the treasury locked away god-tier relics from mythical blades to ancient elixirs. Both zones were heavily armed fortresses holding dark family secrets. Getting a VIP pass to that 2nd floor was basically impossible. The logic behind this decision completely broke her brain. But our guy Zeke, he just rolled his eyes and shamelessly demanded to bag both legendary rewards at once. Balsa shut that down instantly, ordering him to pick one and leave. But Zeke confidently raised a single finger. Refusing to be dismissed, he boldly claimed his piece was not finished yet. Hitting peak panic mode, Freya wildly snatched his collar. She physically dragged him toward the exit. Slapping on a fake customer service smile, she loudly praised the masterhead and announced their escape. While being hauled away, Zeke casually threw a glance over his shoulder. He had one final devastating truth bomb for his old man. He coldly warned Balsa that holding back his true emotions would forever trap him at his current power level. That raw call-out triggered Balsa. He violently erupted with killing intent again. But then the unthinkable happened. His dragon aura was instantly swallowed by an even more terrifying energy, leaking from Zeke. Shaking, Freya desperately begged him to shut up. She basically threw him out the door. Left entirely alone, Balsa stood frozen-mind, reeling from the unfathomable abyss of power his son flexed. Back in the main hall, the moment they were safe, Freya absolutely exploded in a massive mental breakdown. She aggressively interrogated him on why he death-wished his way through that meeting. Zeke just gave a completely unbothered shrug. He innocently claimed he was actually on his absolute best behavior for his dad. Freya nearly lost her soul, hearing his twisted logic. Why play nice with total strangers but act like a menace to the family head? Zeke hit her with the cold truth. It was exactly because Balsa was his father. Analyzing his unnatural aura and villain-level confidence, Freya realized this kid was a walking anomaly. She deadass demanded to know his true identity. Staring at her like she grew a second head, he dropped his signature catchphrase, "I am just Zeke." That left her totally paralyzed. Her brain went into overdrive. Every single Laragon descendant ingested the sacred dragon blood. This magical bloodline made it physically impossible to rebel against the Master Head. Zeke was supposed to be completely chained by this rule. What kind of monster could shrug off that soul-crushing domination? Catching her dramatic internal panic, Zeke casually asked if she was glitching out. She instantly brushed it off, but mentally planned a deep dive into his birth files. Changing the subject, she brought up the epic loot. Only one prize was allowed. When he shamelessly demanded a double dip again, Freya slapped him with a hardcore rejection. Sighing, he locked in the Dragon Hall. Zeke desperately needed to download the last 1,000 years of twisted family history. Suddenly, Rangus charged in like an excited puppy. He was absolutely buzzing to enter the legendary library. Zeke smirked, asking if he was hyped. Rangus nodded furiously. His current spear arts were already top tier, but the thought of uncovering mythical god-level combat manuals inside had him salivating. Passing the deadly exam was finally paying off. Right on cue, Lika popped up, practically vibrating with that same nerd energy. She was ready to devour every forbidden scroll. When Zeke questioned the time limits on their VIP pass, she quickly broke down the archive rules. The rules were absolute. Secure one single tome for the outside, but devour endless knowledge while breathing within these walls. Lika tilted her head, questioning his Dragon Hall choice. Honestly, she totally expected him to raid the treasury for overpowered loot instead. Zeke smirked. Sure, shiny gear was tempting, but pure information held true power right now. Lika nodded, hyping up the second-floor archives. Those upper-level scrolls were absolute legendary tier compared to the ground floor. She bragged her blade mastery was already peak, but Zeke completely zoned out. Was this dude even catching a single word? Approaching the colossal Dragon Hall, a stern gatekeeper dropped the timer. 5 strict hours. Absolute silence was mandatory. Zeke questioned if 5 hours was actually enough. Lika scoffed. That was insanely generous, she insisted. Most scrubs barely survived 2 or 3 hours. Her pro tip, lock down your chosen artifact first, then binge read until the clock strikes 0. Rangus just prayed he would score one top-tier manual. Stepping inside, Zeke realized hunting the perfect scroll would be an absolute grind. Meanwhile, Rangus and Lika were completely paralyzed by pure awe. Standing inside the mythical Dragon Hall felt totally unreal. Zeke, however, reacted completely differently. He just stared at the infinite ocean of ancient texts. A crazy, anticipated grin stretched across his face. Pure adrenaline pumped through his veins. He desperately craved mind-blowing secrets that could actually shatter his expectations. A terrifying revelation struck Zeke like lightning. Trapped inside towering mountains of ancient literature, his brain glitched over insane concepts of reality, tearing rifts, pure chaos, and actual magic. This brutal lore dump literally made his head spin. Completely drained, he collapsed onto the cold stone, processing the pure nightmare fuel. He just absorbed from a millennium of lost history. The world had evolved into something entirely unrecognizable, forcibly chained to another dimension through spatial glitches. 9 centuries ago, a massive tear ripped open into a deadly new dimension, dubbed the Chaos Realm. Inside, apocalyptic beasts literally named Chaos ruled everything, but elite human warriors survived there too, waging endless war against the Horde. Discovering these survivors, the ancient dragons forged a legendary cross-realm alliance. Sealing this pact, 4 supreme female warlords married into the dragon bloodline, birthing the 4 almighty noble branches. Flashbacks hit Zeke, that shadow-infused demon boar he slaughtered, and Lika's crackling blue lightning energy. The brutal truth dropped. He was totally clueless. Both that demonic mist and her electric aura originated from that chaotic dimension. Magic obsessed him the most. It felt like insanely overpowered alien technology from beyond the rift. Driven by intense curiosity, he hunted for spellbooks only to find 0 traces. Suddenly, an icy voice sliced through the Dragon Hall's dead silence, demanding absolute quiet. Whipping around, he caught a golden flash in the darkness, but nobody was there. Was the voice itself a spell? Scanning the ceiling, Zeke detected 0 presence, just that familiar whispering aura. Suddenly, the massive tomes before him levitated into thin air. Watching the scrolls defy gravity, Zeke's jaw dropped. What kind of overpowered sorcery is this? He demanded aloud. Then it clicked. Invisible strings of pure source energy were puppeteering the pages. Insane, he whispered, before the invisible entity instantly shushed him. Snatching a hovering manual, Zeke mocked the shadow. How do you expect silence after pulling a stunt like this? Reveal yourself. A hooded phantom above stayed mute, violently snapping their energy threads. Without warning, an invisible force paralyzed Zeke completely, locking his muscles in absolute stasis. The mysterious guardian ruthlessly chucked him straight down to the ground floor, declaring his reading session permanently terminated. An unseen blast launched him violently through the giant ancient doors. Zeke stuck the landing flawlessly, realizing he just stumbled into a sick new puzzle. His blood pumped with hype. He desperately needed to dissect those insane source threads. Right then, a totally baffled Rangus dashed over demanding answers. Lika sprinted behind, questioning his epic mid-air eviction. Zeke casually shrugged, blaming it on too much hype, and asked about their loot. Rangus proudly flexed, showcasing a deadly spear combat manual, bragging he already mastered the starter combos. Celine chimed in, flexing her brand new combat arts, unlocked from an elite Blade Master scroll. Raymond revealed his deep dive into Guardian combat, snagging a heavy Guardian shield manuscript. Zeke stood dead silent. A hilarious truth hit him. These so-called legendary techniques were just garbage he casually invented in his previous life. Shaking it off, Zeke checked Lika's ultimate choice. Eyes sparkling, she revealed a massive, great sword combat Bible, originally forged by the founder, but heavily buffed by the current patriarch. Absolute perfection for her training arc. Zeke swallowed his words again. Yet another ancient personal skill that the 15th patriarch had completely remixed, just like his other signature arts. Flashbacks hit of endless library shelves packed with his forgotten past life mastery, now sitting beside massively upgraded modern patches. Could this mysterious 15th patriarch actually be the genius architect behind these ultimate reworks? This dude sounded insanely fascinating. Glancing back at the colossal archives, Zeke laughed at his old boredom. Now, he would literally kill to infiltrate that vault again. Fast forward 5 years. Lika dominated a shadowed corridor. Lika scanned the area for Zeke and Rangus until some passing classmates dropped a massive hint that the squad was sweating it out at the training grounds yet again. 12-year-old Lika muttered under her breath before tossing them a quick thanks. Hitting the dirt field, she spotted Rangus, Raymond, and Celine, locking eyes on their 12-year-old target Zeke. Meanwhile, buried in paperwork, Balsa received a game-changing transmission. A brand new special rift had just spawned. He immediately questioned the intel, but the voice on the comms doubled down on the hard facts. Black Dragon Corps, Captain Ein delivered the bombshell. Their scouts predicted an 80% probability of striking magic water, hidden deep inside. But for Balsa, the spawn coordinates were an absolute nightmare. Why did it have to drop in the absolute worst spot? Still, with premium magic water on the line, walking away was not an option. This loot was priceless. Magic water literally mutated normies into elite mages, unlocking the insane ability to convert raw source power straight into mana. This ultimate awakening birthed legendary magic across the realm, but it also sparked bloody turf wars over the sacred magic springs. Today, a noble family's entire dominance is measured strictly by their mage count. Brutal reality check. The Eldritch clan owned exactly 0 magic springs on their turf. Starved of their own natural springs, the Eldritch bloodline had only one hardcore survival route left: violently conquering special rifts. Their current mage roster was painfully thin. Every single awakened warrior, Balsa included, was a battle-scarred veteran who bled for their power inside those dimensional tiers. Yet they were massively outgunned by rival houses, swimming in natural magic springs. Claiming this new rift was not just a mission, it was absolute survival. But Ain's drop zone, the abundant dragon forest, was a massive red flag. Blood had just been spilled there in a recent border clash. Though the Eldritch controlled the majority, the dense woods bled right into enemy territory. Those vicious rivals, the Kerberos family, greedily claimed the oversized chunk, dubbing it the Great Abundant Forest. Ain guaranteed the core rift sat squarely on their soil, but its monstrous expansion radius threatened to spill straight into Kerberos territory. He knew those bloodhounds would blitz the zone the second the intel leaked. Balsa growled, knowing the Kerberos clan had a freakish talent for sniffing out high-tier loot. The clock was ticking down to their inevitable discovery, which meant the Eldritch family had to lock and load for all-out war. The rift's unique chaotic rules restricted both factions, but they had to strike like lightning before the Kerberos hounds caught the scent. Mind made up, Balsa commanded Ein to instantly sound the alarm across all dragon nests. An elite selection exam would launch immediately. Back at the dirt arena, Lika spectated the brutal sparring session, mind-blown by their absolute try-hard energy. Zeke chilled like a boss at the epicenter, dead-eyed and waiting for them to pop off. All 3 fighters rushed him simultaneously from blind angles. Zeke's eyes darkened as he physically anchored himself for the collision. He tanked the triple strike without batting an eyelash. The spearhead of Rangus brutally grazed his cheek, but Zeke just smirked and praised their combo. He immediately roasted 11-year-old Rangus for overcommitting his strength, completely ruining his weapon's natural flow. Pivoting to 12-year-old Celine, he called out her obsession with speed spamming. Her rapid-fire strikes carried 0 actual damage, begging for a lethal balance. Finally, he gave 12-year-old Raymond props for his ironclad shield defense and footwork, but boldly claimed they were all still pulling their punches. He ordered them to crank up their killer instinct, and ruthlessly waved them back in. As Rangus exploded forward again, Lika loudly questioned the absolute insanity of their any-fourth-ode, suicidal death matches. Zeke caught her words and casually asked what her problem was. She shrieked that tanking bare flesh hits without activating a drop of source power was straight-up unhinged. Unbothered Zeke completely missed the issue, shrugging it off as basic conditioning. He totally flexed his ripped physique through his shirt, challenging Lika to admire the epic grind. This raw punishment, he boasted, was the secret hack to forging an indestructible body without magical crutches. Lika groaned, begging him to at least hit pause on the violence while they were actually talking. Right on cue, Rangus viciously backstabbed Zeke with his polearm. He screamed at Lika to glue her eyes to the action, and witnessed the absolute titanium defense of Zeke's body. Lika squeezed her eyes shut, desperately clutching her head, as she dubbed them all certified psychos. Raymond loudly questioned how Zeke's flesh could be so bulletproof without aura. Celine backed him up, swearing this tank build completely defied standard human biology. Lika snapped back, warning them to stop scaling Zeke against regular NPCs. She then dropped the ultimate lore question: did they know the legendary title The Seniors, the East Hall's demon child? Zeke just smirked, wondering if that edgy title was actually meant to offend him. Shifting gears, he questioned her sudden visit. Sparing a glance, Lika brushed off a sparring session for now, claiming she brought major news instead. Zeke tilted his head, immediately intrigued. The rival dragon nest was making a move, and their inevitable clash was approaching way faster than anyone anticipated. Rangus totally froze. Raymond, though, he just smirked, knowing this showdown was destined even if the timeline jumped ahead. Celine instantly connected it to the upcoming trials, but Lika confessed she was flying blind on the actual specifics. Prying for her source, Zeke listened as Lika revealed her secret, heavily eavesdropping on the instructor's every single move. Zeke chuckled, admitting he lacked her radar. Lika was basically the undisputed queen of Academy T. Her tone dropped. The gossip didn't matter, surviving did. The West Hall harbored a literal monster named Asterisk, the ultimate rival aiming for the family throne. Hearing this, Zeke's grin only widened. Finally, some real entertainment. Days vanished. The entire East Dragon Nest flooded the massive arena, packed with mysterious upperclassmen, the rookies barely recognized. Scanning the multigrade crowd, Zeke narrowed his eyes. Lika nudged him, whispering that her intel was dead on, and the rival nest collision was officially happening. Suddenly, heavy silence swallowed the chaotic chatter. Freya marched fiercely onto the training grounds, her icy glare snapping the final whispers in half. The entire student body instantly snapped into a rigid formation. She dropped the bomb. In exactly 3 days, an all-out war against the rival dragon nests would ignite. Pure adrenaline spiked through Zeke's veins as Freya prepared to drop a completely unexpected bombshell on the crowd. 72 hours until total warfare against the opposing dragon halls officially commenced. Shockwaves of panic rippled through the ranks. A brawl this massive never happened before final graduation exams, leaving everyone spiraling over what triggered this unprecedented bloodbath. Freya kept the actual motives locked down completely, refusing to elaborate. But she threw out one insane hook. Only the victors would unlock a highly classified mission. Hearing that, a predatory glint flashed across Zeke's eyes. Anticipation boiled in his gut. The stakes just skyrocketed, turning a boring school event into something incredibly thrilling. Freya broke down the brutal rules, a ruthless elimination bracket demanding 7 elite champions from all 4 halls. The catch: they had until sundown to crown their absolute best fighters. A senior snobbishly assumed only upperclassmen would fight. Freya shot him a lethally freezing glare, mocking his logic for thinking she gathered the rookies for nothing. The bloodbath was open to every single grade. The seniors practically choked in outrage. They completely trashed the idea of rookies surviving against rival dragon halls. To their arrogant minds, the freshmen were basically cannon fodder, entirely useless in a real life-or-death battlefield. Turning her back, Freya coldly declared she couldn't care less about their internal selection politics. Just produce the names by midnight. The second she vanished, a cocky senior named Rick claimed the spotlight. Barking orders, he fiercely claimed all 7 slots for the seniors, violently daring any rookie to object. Without missing a beat, Lika fiercely clapped back loudly, rejecting his absolute garbage logic. She stubbornly demanded equal treatment, roaring that the freshmen absolutely deserved a fair shot at the bloody roster. Rick sneered, staring down at her like a pathetic bug, claiming she was totally misreading the dangerous room. Survival required raw power, not participation trophies. He brutally mocked her, swearing her fancy bloodline meant zero in combat. Lika just started a menacing walk forward. Her terrifying aura exploded, manifesting 3 blindingly bright stars of raw power. She tilted her head, challenging his precious definition of ability. The surrounding seniors instantly froze in absolute horror, utterly paralyzed seeing her hit the impossible 3-star realm. The campus whispers swore she was capped at 2, leaving them reeling over her monstrous growth rate. Unfazed Lika coldly stated she completely agreed with Rick's rule. Absolute devastating strength should dictate the champions. With a deadly smirk, she threw down a loud public gauntlet, daring him to find 7 seniors who could actually crush her. A humiliated Rick choked on his own rage, pathetically blaming her insane power on genetics. Still, he desperately doubled down, labeling every other freshman as unadulterated trash, incapable of surviving their level. Right then, Zeke's chillingly calm voice sliced the tension, complaining about the annoying noise. Boiling over, Rick snapped toward Zeke, viciously demanding a repeat. With a mocking grin, Zeke gladly delivered. Calling him obnoxious again just poured gasoline on Rick's blazing fury. Zeke's voice turned ice cold. Did he seriously think underclassmen were just useless trash? Rick choked on his words. Zeke's eyes darkened as a monstrous, suffocating pressure erupted. Zeke dropped a brutal ultimatum, a massive battle royale, until only 7 survivors stood breathing. Lika facepalmed hard. Zeke's bloodthirsty strategy was absolutely unhinged and way too extreme. Pivoting quickly, she pitched a much smarter alternative, a structured high-stakes preliminary tournament. This leveled the playing field. Anyone craving glory could step up no matter their rank. Locking eyes with the arrogant seniors, she dared them. If they were actually that overpowered, a fair brawl shouldn't scare them. Swallowing his pride, Rick bitterly accepted her terms. He still complained bitterly, calling this whole charade a massive waste of his time. Storming off, Rick fired absolute daggers at Lika and Zeke. The war was on. Lika glanced at Zeke. Was he entering the gauntlet? He didn't even blink. Absolutely. He casually threw Ranga, Selena, and Raymond into the mix, leaving the trio completely shell-shocked. Ranga panicked. Fight the seniors, seriously. Zeke nodded, his conviction unshakable as solid rock. He sparked their memories. They had survived his brutal, hellish training for years now. If they hid their fangs now, what was the point of all that blood and sweat? Selena swallowed hard, terrified by the crushing pressure of facing veteran monsters. But Raymond gripped his weapon. If Zeke said jump, they were going all in. A fierce grin crossed Lika's face. The ultimate dream team was back in action. She hyped up the surrounding rookies, but pure terror kept them glued to the floor. Defeating 3-star elites seemed mathematically impossible to them. Zeke just sighed at their pathetic despair. Why be so spineless? Crushing stronger enemies was the ultimate cheat code to level up. Plus, he smirked. He was dying to expose just how fraudulent these elite seniors really were. Steel hissed. The seniors unsheathed, their blades dripping with toxic arrogance and mocking laughter. They sneered at the rookie's audacity, fully convinced these pathetic insects were marching toward total annihilation. Ranga's squad braced themselves, stomachs twisting into sick knots as the enemy advanced. A senior laughed cruelly, joking about holding back so the babies wouldn't cry too hard. Another chuckled darkly. Besides Lika, they were just pathetic 2-star stepping stones anyway. Catching their trembling shadows, Zeke broke the tension. Why look like you're heading to a funeral? Ranga fired back, sweating bullets. Facing a wall of 3-star titans was absolute nightmare fuel. Zeke shattered their doubt. 5 grueling years of his hellish boot camp, they were forged in fire. They just needed to trust the absolute lethality they had built in the shadows. His unyielding faith ignited a roaring fire inside Selena and Raymond's chests. Yet Ranga's knees still felt like jelly, a cold dread clinging to his gut. Cut the tragic backstory, a senior barked viciously, demanding they speed up their inevitable execution. It was time to put the trash in its place. But 60 seconds later, absolute dead silence. Jaws hit the floor. The spectators couldn't process the absolute glitch in reality unfolding before them. The underdogs had completely pulverized the elites. Were the seniors just incredibly washed up this year? No. The seniors weren't weak. These rookies were absolute apex predators. Zeke beamed, his pride practically glowing. Thrilled by the absolute massacre, he rushed over to crown Ranga and the squad with praise. Ranga's parrying was razor-sharp now, his sniper-like eyes punishing every single microscopic gap in enemy defenses. Selena's Windflower Flurry was beautifully lethal. And Raymond, his flawless transitions between Shield Wall and Blade Strike were mesmerizing. Absolute perfection. If bathing in actual combat gave them this swagger, they'd soon be unstoppable gods. He also analyzed Lika. Her one-shot lightning strikes were devastating. Meanwhile, the remaining elites stood paralyzed brains, short-circuiting at the sheer savagery witnessed. Lika smirked. Trash talking naturally demands a brutal reality check. But Rick's mind snapped. 3-star elites destroyed, impossible. Losing to mere 2-star rookies, Zeke closed in, mocking his opponent's desperate denial of the brutal reality unfolding right before his eyes. Closing the gap, Zeke dropped a cold truth. Ranks and age, pure nonsense. On the battlefield, absolute power dictates the sole survivor. If seniors lack strength, they get crushed. It was that simple. Trembling with blazing fury, Rick jammed a shaking finger toward him. He barked that the freshman was delusional. Star ranks equaled raw power. How could this newbie ignore such a basic, undeniable law? Unfazed Zeke delivered a chilling reality check. Fancy ranks mean absolutely nothing when your heart stops. That morbid truth froze Rick completely. Zeke's piercing gaze dared the senior to grasp the terrifying essence of combat. True strength just meant surviving the bloodbath. Snapping out of his sudden shock, Rick erupted into a roaring inferno. "Shut your mouth," he roared. As a proud senior, he refused to let some punk manipulate him with unhinged mind games. He bragged about holding back earlier, promising pure devastation now. Zeke just sighed, utterly exhausted by this pathetic display of fragile ego. "Little kids need to learn their place," Zeke taunted. "Let your fists do the actual talking." With everyone else down, he threw down the ultimate gauntlet. "Show me those legendary senior martial arts. Prove your training wasn't a total joke." That disrespect pushed Rick over the absolute edge. Screaming pure murder, he unleashed his grand combat art, rocketing forward like a freight train. Yet, before impact, blinding gold ignited within Zeke's deadly gaze. Bam! A single, devastating counterhook launched the senior flying across the entire battleground. A savage smirk crossed Zeke's face. He mockingly praised the senior's perfectly flawless training routine. Dead silence instantly swallowed the massive arena. The crowd froze completely while the mighty senior crumbled to his knees in utter humiliating defeat. Watching the devastation, Lika whispered how insanely overpowered the kid truly was. The guy complimented his opponent's hard work, only to blatantly one-shot him before any actual techniques were displayed. Cutting to the West faction base, a totally grim scene unfolded. Agonized groans echoed everywhere as battered students desperately clutched their bleeding wounds. Overlooking this massive failure, a dark figure scoffed in absolute disgust. "Trash," he muttered heavily. "Every single person here is just completely pathetic. This ruthless tyrant, Veniel Fafnir Eldragon, a terrifying prime contender fighting to seize the legendary clan's highest throne." Suddenly, a fresh squad of survivors approached the air. Bowing with intense reverence, their commander announced their brutal trial phase was officially accomplished. Meet Alan Veniel's fiercely loyal enforcer and a formidable 3-star elite. Behind him loomed the bloodied victors, who actually survived the merciless culling. Within those elite ranks stood Redden, a literal 12-year-old child prodigy. The ruthless heir's predatory gaze instantly locked onto the survivor. Beckoning the kid forward, Veniel demanded the absolute truth. Was this tiny rookie really packing the terrifying power of a 3-star? The boy's confident nod triggered a sinister grin. "Competence breeds reward," Veniel purred, promising a highly coveted spot in his personal elite guard. Redden dropped into a deep shaking bow. His tiny chest practically exploded with absolute pride at winning the terrifying young master's direct blessing. Following such an absolute monster of a leader, the young prodigy knew the mighty West faction was destined for ultimate victory. Crushing the special operation would be a total breeze for their elite squad. That flawless victory would undoubtedly crown the mighty Veniel as the supreme ruler of the Eldragon Empire. Securing his spot as the Patriarch's vanguard, suddenly, Alan slid out of the shadows, urgently requesting his Dark Master's immediate undivided attention. Prompted by his lord, the loyal enforcer leaned close. Secret intel confirmed the fiercely talented Lady Lyca was officially dropping into the East roster. Raking a hand through his hair, pure venom twisted Veniel's handsome features. "That relentless bug," he growled, rising up with a terrifying killing intent. But the irritation vanished. Lyca's legendary skills meant absolutely nothing. The West faction would ruthlessly crush anyone blocking their path. His booming voice echoed with absolute certainty. They would obliterate the lethal special mission entirely. This flawless massacre would finally force his arrogant older siblings to watch him ascend the bloody throne of the family patriarch. Judgment Day dawned heavily. Elite warriors from every single dragon branch swarmed the colossal battleground, drowning in a massive sea of screaming spectators. Suffocating anxiety violently choked Rangus as he stared at the endless ocean of terrifying faces. The sheer scale of the audience was deeply paralyzing. Stepping up, Lyca calmly noted that practically the entire academy had crawled out to witness this brutal spectacle. Honestly, she smirked, the Colosseum would be completely overflowing if the merciless preliminary exams hadn't already weeded out the weak. Seeking agreement, she met his eyes. But her traumatized companion stood utterly frozen in pure silence. Her casual remark violently stabbed his deep childhood trauma. It reminded him of the broken failures deemed pathetic pseudo-dragons just like his father. Catching that soul-crushing flash of dark despair, Lyca masterfully pivoted. A solid, comforting smack to his shoulder instantly shattered his gloomy mental spiral. "Chin up," she demanded. Standing here as the East faction's ultimate chosen champions was an absolute honor worth holding their heads high for. That fierce spark reignited his fighting spirit. Rangus nodded deeply, swearing to burn every last drop of his aura today. The duo's gaze then locked onto a lone wolf. Slicing through the tense crowd, they approached Zeke, who radiated an intensely terrifying, absolute calm. Sensing the heavy silence, Rangus frowned. Lika chimed in, totally weirded out by his quiet vibe. Zeke brushed it off with an icy smirk. He was just scanning their pathetic power levels. A booming shout hyping Zeke's crazy skills shattered the tension. The sudden noise completely jump-scared Rangus, sending him crashing down. Zeke turned to spot two guys rushing over. A subtle grin flashed across his face. Things were definitely leveling up. The two veteran competitors sprinted over, bowing with massive respect as they reached the squad. Rick admitted their last epic clash had totally shattered and rebuilt their entire combat mindset. Now they only bowed to pure strength. Zeke just smirked. Character development wasn't terrible. Meanwhile, a traumatized Rangus shamelessly hugged Zeke's legs, his soul still shaken by Rick's jump scare. While peeling Rangus off the floor, Zeke's sharp gaze swept the arena. Every rival from the other Dragon Halls radiated 3-star energy. Only East Hall stood out. Exactly as predicted, 0 4-star heavyweights had entered the chat. Yet multiple auras flickered right on the edge of a breakthrough. His battle-hungry blood started boiling. Mid-chat, a random girl suddenly tackled Laika into a massive surprise back hug. Lika instantly clocked Sandy's signature squeeze. Their squealing reunion completely shattered Zeke's intense focus. Refusing to let go, Sandy excitedly screamed that it had been ages, hyping her up. She aggressively joked about wrecking any bullies, but Laika just giggled, completely unfazed and chilling. Celine side-eyed the hyper-newcomer. Glowing Lika introduced her elite cousin Sandy Typhona, the Typhona boss's heir. The legendary name dropped everyone's jaws. The Typhona clan top tier, one of the untouchable 4 great families. Sandy's bright smile instantly froze into a deadly glare. Sizing up the crew, she demanded answers. Laika proudly called them her ride-or-die squad. Sandy sharply raised an eyebrow. Was Laika really claiming these literal nobodies as friends? She brutally dropped the truth. Playing nice is cute, but these weaklings severely lacked the stats to back an L-Dragon heir. Zeke cut in smoothly, his voice freezing. The air power is proven in blood. Sandy whipped around aggressively, demanding his identity. Laika frantically introduced Zeke as a rival family head candidate. Sandy's sharp eyes instantly dilated. She viciously smirked, asking if he was the boss's infamous, whispered about, illegitimate son. Then dropping a toxic bomb, she openly mocked how a low-tier bastard had not died yet. Zeke's chilling smirk didn't even twitch. Horrified by the absolute disrespect, Lika desperately confronted Sandy. Sandy scoffed at the naive defense, coldly reminding Laika that Zeke was their ultimate enemy. She ruthlessly warned that being a softie would guarantee getting completely crushed by the... She trashed the whole squad as absolute garbage. Not a single 3-star aura among them. Did the East Hall seriously fall off this hard, she mocked. But Zeke instantly shut her down, smiling yet radiating absolute danger. He warned her not to sleep on their squad, or she would face a brutal wake-up call. Sandy's fake smile instantly shattered. Her gaze turned to ice, daring him to speak again. She boiled over. How could a filthy, illegitimate nobody with 0 backing dare run his mouth? Zeke did not even flinch. He coolly corrected her. That was not advice. It was a dead serious warning. That flex only poured gas on Sandy's fury. Before she snapped back, someone intervened. The newcomer told Sandy to chill out. "I am Edgies Van Blade," he announced smoothly. "The North Hall's chosen representative." Rangus scrambled his brain trying to pinpoint that legendary name. Sandy aggressively barked at Edgies to back off, but he just smirked. With the bloodbath starting soon, he could not let them waste energy here. The suffocating pressure finally lifted. The trainees went back to whispering, buzzing with hype for the main event. Suddenly, a massive presence stepped into the arena's core. Dead silence instantly swallowed the Colosseum. A feral, hyped-up grin stretched across Zeke's face. It was the legendary Teach Mintrick, the absolute beast leading the Gold Dragon Corps. The supreme educator himself. His booming voice shattered the silence. "The ultimate survival war starts right now," he roared. His aura made it clear the battlefield was officially open. He locked eyes with the rookies, laying out the brutal rules, a ruthless tournament-style knockout bracket. All 4 mighty halls clashing in pure combat. The factions would be sliced into 2 massive death blocks. The absolute monsters, surviving each block, would then violently collide in the epic grand finals. This was not a team brawl, it was pure one-on-one carnage. Every hall had to unleash their 7 elite weapons, following a strictly locked-in roster. First, squad to crush 4 enemies, claims total victory. Mintrick laid down the absolute law. Once the blood starts spilling, swapping your lineup is strictly forbidden. No exceptions. This twist turned the draft into pure mental warfare. One massive brain play could totally rig the final outcome, before a single punch even connected. Dropping the ultimate bomb, Mintrick finally exposed the insane prize waiting at the end. The survivors would not just win, they would score a legendary top-secret mission, straight from the core of the Eldragon bloodline. Crushing this quest meant stamping your name into history and elevating the entire family's god-tier legacy. For Lika and Viniel, this was not just a basic flex. This was their ultimate stepping stone toward conquering the throne of the entire clan. With the hype maxed out, Mintrick ordered the bracket draw. He summoned the elite alphas from every faction to step up and pull their destiny from the box. First on deck, the West Hall's apex predator, Viniel Fafnir Eldrigan. Viniel strutted toward the official like he already owned the place. Without flinching, he plunged his hand in and snatched his fate. Mintrick gave a quick nod, sending him back. As Viniel turned away, sheer dread washed over Lika, cold sweat tracing down her cheek. Her eyes were totally locked onto her big brother. He stared straight back at her squad, flashing a twisted, straight-up demonic smirk. Zeke instantly caught that toxic vibe. He leaned close to Lika, whispering to ask if they had nasty history. She gave a dark, heavy nod. "That is the ultimate boss of the West Hall," she muttered grimly. The monster himself, Veniel Fafnir Eldragon. Zeke soaked in the heavy lore, casually dropping a cool, "I see," while a subtle, dangerous smirk danced on his lips. He already sensed the West Hall was stacked with absolute beasts. Honestly, every faction here radiated hardcore training, yet his razor-sharp instincts picked up on a massive power gap, dividing the elite from the weak. Suddenly, Zeke's radar pinged on a totally familiar face in the mob. It was Retin. It had been a hot minute since their last encounter. Zeke instantly flashed back to Retin's insane combat flow during the brutal entrance trials. Realizing this kid unlocked 3-star aura at merely 12 years old, Zeke could not help but grin with pride. The kid had clearly been grinding like a maniac, but right then, Retin's eyes snapped over, locking onto Rengus. His face instantly dropped, twisting into pure venomous disgust. His glare screamed, "Why is this deadweight allowed in the legendary selection?" The rest of the mob recognized Rengus too. Their jaws hit the floor. "What is that trash doing here?" someone yelled out. The heavy toxic spotlight made Rengus start sweating bullets. Raymond caught his bro panicking and immediately checked on him. Rengus forced out a shaky "I am good," while Retin kept shooting absolute laser beams of hate. Boom Mintrick's voice instantly sliced through the toxic whispering, summoning the North Hall's alpha. Once Edgy's locked in his fate, Mintrick barked for the South Hall's champion to step up. That rival marched up and snagged his destiny stone. Finally, Mintrick's gaze shifted, calling out the last warrior, East Hall representative. Catching the announcement, Lika locked eyes with Zeke, signaling his exact turn. Zeke blinked in pure confusion, questioning why he had to step up. Her response, ice cold and simple. He was the absolute powerhouse of their squad. Rick and the rest instantly backed her solid claim. Still, Zeke openly questioned if tossing their rookie into the spotlight made more tactical sense right now. Lika quickly shut that down, noting their age gap was basically 0. She practically shoved him toward the drawing box. Left with 0 escape routes, Zeke sighed and marched straight up. But Sandy immediately fired shots, fiercely demanding why a mere illegitimate kid was stealing Lika's rightful spotlight. Lika coldly repeated the facts. Zeke was their absolute peak. Sandy, however, totally scoffed at that idea. Snapping that Zeke hadn't even scratched the 3-star tier like Lika, she aggressively reminded everyone that this entire clash was actually a bitter leadership war against Viniel. At this pathetic pace, Sandy warned Lika faced total destruction. A fearless smirk crossed Lika's face. She brushed off the threat entirely, completely unfazed by the intense pressure, boasting absolute faith in her squad's raw power. Zeke smoothly snatched the final stone. As the 4 reps gripped their fate, Mintrick commanded them to pump raw aura right into the objects. Following his strict order, the ancient rocks pulsed to life, exploding with either a blinding sapphire or a blood-crimson aura. Mintrick declared these colors locked in their battle blocks. The opening war East Hall clashing against North Hall. Following that, West Hall would collide with South Hall. Realizing North Hall was their brutal first hurdle, Zeke's crew instantly locked a deadly gaze onto Sandy and Aegis's squad. A massive shadow immediately grabbed their focus, staring up at this towering beast with razor-sharp eyes. Rengus violently shivered. He choked out a panicked whisper, questioning if that monster actually attended Dragon's Nest. Lika grimly nodded, confessing that colliding with Sandy's monstrous lineup right out of the gate was absolutely not the master plan. Suddenly, violent lightning erupted around Sandy. She flashed a wicked sneer, mocking Lika that this was the perfect chance to shatter her pathetic little fantasies. Aiming a finger straight at their squad, Sandy swore absolute and merciless annihilation, eager to brutally remind Lika where she truly belonged. Yet Lika stood like an absolute mountain. Blinding golden thunder exploded from her core. She met the lethal threat head-on, daring them to bring the heat. Meanwhile, gripping his radiant sapphire stone, Zeke caught Aegis flashing him, a terrifyingly calm knowing grin. The rival fighter softly mentioned he was craving their inevitable bloodbath. Catching that quiet battle lust, Zeke's own smirk grew. He boldly claimed they were definitely going to vibe, admitting his own blood was practically boiling for the clash. A suffocating silence instantly swallowed the massive arena. Then, Mentric's booming voice shattered the heavy, tense atmosphere, officially unleashing the chaotic opening war. East Hall versus North Hall. Hearing the call, Rick faced Zeke, promising to secure total victory, but his trembling eyes screamed absolute terror and crippling doubt. Catching that panic, cold sweat dropped down Laika's face. She anxiously checked with Zeke, terrified by Rick's completely shattered composure. Zeke bluntly agreed the guy looked like a complete nervous wreck. Seconds later, Mentric roared, demanding if both squads were prepped. Gulping down his intense fear, Rick dragged himself into the brutal kill zone, locking eyes with his foe. Mentric dropped the signal. The bloodbath was live. Rick instantly funneled raw aura into his fist, launching a desperate blitz. Watching from the edge, Zeke quietly calculated the impending destruction. Lika grimly muttered that this clash looked incredibly brutal, based on raw physical specs. She begged for Zeke's tactical read. Zeke coolly stated that victory is never certain, unless he fought, making victory an absolute guarantee. Annoyed, Lika snapped. She meant Rick, not his massive ego. Zeke went dead quiet, his piercing gaze tracking every strike. He coldly analyzed that, on pure stats, the North Hall beast matched Rick perfectly. If Rick just unleashed his standard brutal flow, he held a solid winning shot. Lika completely agreed, but she highlighted the absolute terror of bleeding in front of such a colossal, screaming audience. The gravity of carrying their faction was crushing his soul. In the dirt, Rick desperately ate brutal back-to-back strikes. Zeke nodded at her flawless logic, but pointed out that total monsters like Sandy and Aegis Fanblade flat out ignored those rules. He coldly revealed that both absolute beasts were currently scratching the legendary 4-star realm, so a screaming mob wouldn't even dent their iron wills. He also remembered Sandy shared Laika's mighty Typhona bloodline, meaning she undoubtedly weaponized the exact same devastating ancestral combat arts. This clash, he realized, would powerfully forge Laika's growth. Suddenly, the match violently ended, as Rick was smashed into the concrete. Mentric's booming voice shattered the silence, crowning North Hall the victors of match number 1. Panic gripped Marin's chest. Voice trembling like a leaf, she muttered that losing her upcoming brawl simply wasn't an option. Laika offered warm reassurance, but reality hit hard. Marin got crushed instantly, leaving Laika and Zeke exhaling heavy sighs over the brutal beatdown. Shaking like leaves, Eric and Marin bowed their heads, begging Zeke for forgiveness. Zeke merely chuckled, totally aware the Colosseum's suffocating pressure had already swallowed them whole. He brushed off their panic. Had this been a true bloodbath where survival mattered, their survival instincts would have completely rewritten that tragic ending. Flashing a bright grin, Zeke grounded them. This arena existed purely for leveling up and grinding skills, not spilling actual blood. Today's massive L served as the ultimate safe tutorial, forging their mental armor for future life or death wars. The grind simply continues. His epic pep talk instantly sparked a fire, completely reigniting Eric and Marin's shattered confidence. However, facing a brutal 0-2 deficit, the next clash meant everything. Zeke locked eyes with Rangus, questioning his resolve. Ghostly pale, Rangus practically cried, begging his captain to stop piling on the agony. His stomach had been doing backflips since dawn. Making things infinitely worse, his challenger stood as North Hall's most absolute towering unit. Catching those demonic, crimson eyes totally broke him. Rangus erupted into literal tears, death gripping Zeke while crying about the monstrous senior. Completely unfazed, Zeke stated absolute facts. They had totally crushed older veterans back during their rookie squad days. But Rangus fiercely pushed back. Those past enemies never radiated such pure, nightmare-inducing aura. Confronting this absolute beast before a massive crowd literally made him want to puke from pure anxiety. Exhaling deeply, Zeke warmly ruffled his teammate's hair. Wrapping an arm around his shoulder, he ordered Rangus to analyze the enemy. Identify the exact weapon that Brute wields. Squinting through his panic, Rangus spotted the ridiculously colossal greatsword resting there. A giant blade, he stuttered. Zeke firmly nodded. The mission was dead simple. Just clash against the sword wielder, block out everything else. When he lunges, you deflect. If he swings high, you retreat. When he chops down, dash forward and pierce him with your spear. Erase the crowd and the scary face. Track the weapon perfectly, exactly like your daily training grinds. Drinking in those words, Rangus's fighting spirit reignited. Zeke caught a razor-sharp elite concentration, slowly awakening within his gaze. The kid definitely needed guidance reaching flow state, but unlocking that Zen mode solo would instantly make his power ceiling infinite. Watching Rangus march toward the battleground, Zeke deeply wondered how much this epic clash would evolve his stats. Up in the bleachers, the entire audience instantly gasped at the totally absurd weight class difference. Whispers mocked the frail rookie's inevitable doom against the Titan. Mentric dropped his hand, and absolute chaos erupted. The giant blitzed instantly, launching the single blade branch skill, yet Rengus flickered like a total phantom, smoothly dodging the deadly slash. The senior sneered arrogantly, barking that escape was utterly impossible in this cage. He chained into the twin fang branch, a suffocating barrage, but Rengus danced through the tempest elegantly, deflecting every single blow. From the bench, Lika clutched her anxious chest. Celine sharply noted the beast was steadily shrinking the gap, trapping their boy completely. Raymond's sweat dropped, asking if their guy could survive. Zeke remained utterly chill, telling everyone to relax. He gestured toward Rengus's gaze, pointing out how his combat clarity was hitting terrifying new peaks. Slipping beneath another brutal cleave, the vibe shifted. The Titan triggered his supreme ultimate, the legendary Leaf Storm dance. Right before absolute destruction hit, a brilliant spark of pure awakening flashed inside Rengus's pupils. He counterattacked perfectly, activating flowing clouds and water to beautifully redirect the monstrous heavy strike. The insane shockwave completely shattered the giant's stance. That tiny window was his golden ticket. Channeling the devastating raging current strike, his spear exploded forward, burying itself right into the Titan's armor. The critical hit sparked an instant knockout. The beast crashed like a falling building, forcing Mentric to slam the match shut. East Hall absolutely clutched round number 3. Rengus exhaled a massive trembling breath, while a proud smirk painted Zeke's face. This epic win officially launched their revenge arc. East Hall's hype train went crazy after Celine violently swept match number 4. The scoreboard gap widened when Raymond effortlessly secured bout 5. Finally, match 6 dropped, forcing Lika to clash against her own blood, Sandy. Lika threw a cold smirk, noting ages had passed since their blades last tasted steel. Despite sharing explosive lightning arts, their actual combat styles lived in totally separate dimensions. Sandy openly gasped. North Hall's literal top tiers actually got clapped by rookies who had not even touched the 3-star power tier. Lika stayed ice cold, reminding her sister of her previous absolute warning. Sandy smirked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Okay, I'll admit, your little squad actually packs a punch. But she immediately cut to the chase, relying on a hyped-up crew wouldn't settle this sibling rivalry. Boom, a blinding golden aura exploded from Sandy, suffocating the entire arena. Lika visibly gulped, sweating bullets under the pressure. Your friends mean absolutely nothing, Sandy sneered. Claiming the family throne requires raw, unstoppable personal power. You're literally just second place in East Hall, Sandy scoffed, questioning if her sister grasped the deadly reality of their bloodline. Lika snapped back that she knew exactly where she stood. Her gaze briefly darted toward Zeke, who was chilling on the sidelines. With blazing resolve, she declared she hadn't dropped her dream of ruling the clan or her ultimate goal of crushing Sandy. She genuinely believed her current stats could secure the win. Sandy just smirked. Bet. Let's see that big energy in action. Flash. Activating her skill, Sandy literally deleted herself from Lika's field of vision. The crowd gasped as a shockwave ripped through the stands. A split second later, Sandy materialized right behind Lika's back. Show me this so-called strength, Sandy whispered chillingly. Lika's survival instincts kicked in instantly, throwing up a desperate defensive block. But Sandy was playing 4D chess, instantly dropping low and juking right back to the front. She unleashed a lightning-fast strike from a total blind spot. Steel screamed against steel. Watching the insane clash, Zeke analyzed that Sandy was completely dominating the match as expected. He quietly wondered how Lika could survive against a monster wielding the exact same lightning greatsword arts, but maxed out. Suddenly, Sandy triggered her brutal finishing move, Judgment. Slash. The savage strike tore a fresh bloody gash across Lika's ribs. Seeing their friend get sliced, totally freaked out Celine and Marin. Lika desperately skidded backwards, grinding her teeth and mentally chanting that she wasn't out yet. Realizing it was just a surface-level graze, she scrambled to recover her stamina. Up in the stands, Rungus lost his mind over Sandy's broken stats, totally mind-blown by how fast Lika got completely blitzed. Raymond chimed in, dropping the lore that Sandy actually mentored Lika back in the day. Shaking off the stun, Lika exploded forward, throwing herself back into the meat grinder. Sandy effortlessly sidestepped the heavy slash, teasing that Lika still rage-swung like a noob whenever she felt trapped. Tuning out the toxic trash talk, Lika doubled down on her frenzied assault. Sparks violently erupted as their supercharged lightning auras collided, deafening everyone with screeching metal. The sheer friction of their raw energy triggered a massive shockwave that nuked the arena's center. As the dense smoke cleared, Lika stood completely battered, dripping blood from multiple fresh gashes. Smirking, Sandy pointed out that just as predicted, her little sister's combat mechanics were still total trash. She couldn't even secure the MVP spot in her own division. Sandy flexed that if Lika had just transferred to North Hall, she would have never let her combat stats stay this embarrassingly low. Ignoring her bleeding wounds, Lika gritted her teeth stubbornly, forcing herself upright. "This isn't over yet," she roared defiantly. Just tap out already, Sandy sighed, brutally, hitting her with a reality check that a low-tier player couldn't possibly win. She even grumbled that if she knew things would get this pathetic, she would have dragged Laika to North Hall by complaining to their dad. From day one, Laika didn't say a single word. She just hoisted her massive blade back up, radiating pure, unfiltered rebellion. Facepalming at her sister's absolute stubbornness, Sandy realized it was time to dish out a highly traumatic physical lesson. Whoosh, blinking out of reality, Sandy respawned in Laika's blind spot, her body surging with high-voltage electricity. Launching a fake-out strike, Sandy completely baited Laika's desperate parry before abruptly switching up her entire combat flow. Wham! A savage roundhouse kick slammed into Laika's ribs, shattering her stance, with her defense totally wide open. Sandy went full demon mode, unleashing a merciless combo that shredded her armor and flesh. The spectator squad was having a literal panic attack. Zeke, on the other hand, just stood there, totally unfazed. His sharp eyes caught it. Laika's aura was violently trembling like she was inches away from a massive power awakening. Charging up her next fatal blow, Sandy coldly warned her little sister to just give up before things got ugly. Then she unleashed the Lightning Greatsword's first hidden art, completely nuking Laika inside an apocalyptic tornado of golden electricity. Dead silence choked the arena. The entire crowd held their breath, absolutely convinced that Godly Nuke had finished the duel. But Sandy's jaw dropped. Through the dispersing smoke and sparks, Laika was somehow dragging herself back from the dead. "I get it now," Laika muttered, her voice chillingly calm. "I finally comprehend the true depths of your broken skills." Sandy was completely shook, demanding to know how her sister was still conscious right now. That ultimate strike was mathematically supposed to be an instant KO. Bleeding out Laika actually agreed with her older sister. "The old version of me would have instantly died," to that she smirked through the blood. "But spoiler alert, I've spent the last 5 years grinding through absolute hell to surpass you." The real bloodshed had just begun. This clash was far from finished. Before entering the arena, Zeke caught Laika's trembling aura, questioning her sudden loss of confidence. Reading her hesitation, he probed deeper. Laika confessed her dread. She was facing her absolute worst nightmare, her flesh and blood, Sandy. Zeke absorbed this in silence. Laika revealed Sandy was the prodigy who introduced her to the legendary Lightning Greatsword arts. Even though the Typhona Patriarch hammered the basics into her, Sandy remained her ultimate guiding light in combat. Whenever a complex sword form shattered her focus, her sister always provided the crucial missing piece. Sandy was her undeniable master. Zeke nodded, processing the grim reality, while Laika exhaled deeply. She tragically admitted a harsh truth. In countless brutal sparring sessions, Sandy remained utterly undefeated. For every agonizing hour she bled during the last 5 years, her terrifying sister matched that exact grind. Her fierce bravado completely evaporated into crippling doubt. Zeke cut through the tension with a chillingly calm tone, demanding she channel their hellish training. He forced her to visualize those 5 grueling years locked in relentless combat, breaking their absolute limits together. Yet recalling those traumatic survival sessions instantly shattered Laika's composure into pure disgust. A wicked smirk danced across Zeke's lips as he teased her painfully twisted, traumatized expression. Was surviving his monstrous regime truly that horrific? His gaze suddenly sharpened, zeroing in on her most fatal flaw. Her explosive emotions always sabotaged her focus whenever the battlefield erupted into pure chaos. That was the sole purpose behind 5 years of agony, forging an unbreakable icy calm within her soul, maintaining crystal clarity during slaughter. Laika groaned, getting traumatic flashbacks of his absolutely ruthless surprise attacks. He just flashed a cocky wink, claiming that pure savagery defined a true warrior's indomitable spirit. His smug attitude ignited her fiery temper. She aggressively snapped back, questioning his totally twisted definition of spirit. Zeke kept grinning. Those hellish trials were already paying off. Now, her predator eyes could flawlessly dissect enemy movements, even while dodging lethal strikes. Laika reluctantly agreed, but still feared this newly awakened power was useless against Sandy. He promised a brutal awakening. Once a genius like her truly mastered the art of battlefield perception, absolute dominance awaited. She would unlock god-tier combat vision. Plus, she carried the unmatched legacy of the absolute strongest master him. Backed by his monstrous teachings, her pathetic losing streak meant nothing. Laika studied his unwavering, ironclad confidence. He spoke absolute facts, without a hint of doubt. A gentle smile finally broke through, thanking him for extinguishing her panic. Right before stepping out, Zeke's eyes sparked with fierce curiosity, verifying if Sandy truly forged her lightning foundation. As she nodded, a brilliant, sinister strategy clicked in his mind. This deathmatch was actually a golden power-up. She just needed to treat this bloodbath exactly like their hellish sparring sessions, and relentlessly analyze every single technique Sandy unleashed. Stealing her master's moves would instantly trigger a massive evolution. Now roaring across the bloodstained arena, Laika proudly announced she had been meticulously dissecting Sandy's devastating sword arts. She deliberately tanked those lethal thunderstrikes, completely downloading the complex combat data, until she utterly shattered her idol's flawless technique. Sandy froze in her tracks, visibly shaken by this terrifying revelation. Exploiting that split second of panic, Lika exploded forward with blinding velocity. Her sword carved phantom trails through the air. This dizzying illusion completely mind-gamed Sandy, masking the blade's true rhythm. Was it accelerating or dead-stopping? That fatal hesitation granted Lika a devastatingly clean hit. As Sandy staggered back, Lika mercilessly capitalized, erupting into a monstrous hurricane of high-voltage slashes. The elder sister was instantly pushed back, desperately blocking the catastrophic onslaught. As Lika triggered another explosive dash, Sandy's mind completely short-circuited. How did her weak sibling suddenly unlock such godlike speed? Without warning, Lika ruthlessly attempted to hijack Sandy's ultimate execution skill, Judgment. The strike fizzled out, but Lika instantly calculated her fatal error regarding combat tempo. She missed the organic rhythm flow. Armed with this newly stolen knowledge, she prepared for activation. Sandy arrogantly sneered, barking that supreme mastery could never be pirated from a single pathetic glance. Up in the stands, Rangus and the squad were utterly paralyzed by this mind-blowing dominant evolution of Lika's battle prowess. Meanwhile, Zeke just chuckled with a sinister satisfaction. Everything flowed exactly according to his master plan. Mirror matches always unlocked the most explosive combat awakenings. When a bewildered Rick begged for context, Zeke smirked. He revealed Lika was literally absorbing her sister's entire moveset mid-fight. Mid-battle, their brutal training finally paid off, gifting her an ice-cold focus. She read her enemy perfectly under crushing pressure. Eric listened, total realization washing over his face. As weapons clashed, Zeke noted how Lika used to blindly rage-obsessed only with her own blade. But now, total evolution. She was actually analyzing her enemy's attack patterns in real time. Mid-combat, unlocking a completely new tier of explosive power. Sandy bitterly raged against this reality, screaming that a cheap copycat move could never take her down. However, after an earth-shattering collision of lightning and steel, Sandy was blasted backward, her face absolutely stunned, realizing she was completely outclassed. Lika blitzed forward, her voice echoing with awakened dominance. She announced that for years she had survived hellish near-death training with a certain monster. Channeling a raging thunderstorm into her blade, she showed Sandy the absolute peak form of her. Lightning, great sword arts. With a roaring war cry, she detonated her ultimate thunderstrike. The catastrophic scale of it left Sandy paralyzed. A massive tsunami of golden lightning violently erupted, swallowing the whole arena in blinding radiance. As the intense glare faded, Sandy barely stood. Gasping for air, she locked eyes with her sister, finally conceding Lika's insane power jump. A second later, her legs gave out, crashing to the dirt. Lika took the flawless win. Even Vanille watched completely mind-blown, failing to compute the god-tier aura Lika just flexed. As Lika swaggered back to the squad, Zeke flashed a proud smirk, joking that he wouldn't even need to draw his sword today. Lika beamed hyped about clutching the team win. She pointed out that if she fumbled, Zeke would have been forced to duel Edgar next. That name instantly sparked Zeke's radar. He asked for intel, but Lika just shook her head, explaining they hadn't met, but his insane clout spoke volumes. Edgar was globally recognized as the ultimate prodigy of the legendary Van Blade bloodline. Zeke's eyes locked onto the silent warrior. Sensing the suffocating pressure radiating from him, Zeke silently agreed the hype was totally real. Lika warned that even with Zeke's stats fighting, Edgar would be a massive gamble with 50-50 odds. Suddenly, Mentric crashed the center stage. He dropped a bombshell, even though East Hall already clinched it. The bloodbath wouldn't stop until everyone fought. Rangus and Zeke exchanged visibly stunned reactions. At this wild rule change, Marin spoke up, totally confused, thinking the whole tournament was over. After 4 solid victories, Zeke stayed dead quiet, his intense glare bouncing between Mentric and Edgar. His gut screamed they were scheming something shady, but honestly, his battle craze completely overpowered his suspicion. Whatever trap they set meant absolutely nothing. As long as he got to throw down, he was satisfied. Edgar smirked, claiming that despite North Hall taking the loss, fighting Zeke was his real prize. Zeke raised an eyebrow, questioning this hardcore obsession. Edgar didn't hesitate, revealing his hyperfixation stemmed from Zeke being East Hall's ultimate trump card. Even with a powerhouse like Lady Lika there, they picked Zeke. That one single detail made Edgar desperately want to expose his true identity. He noted that even with elite family genetics, Zeke's aura only read as a measly 2-star level, yet he was still the absolute main event, over the 3-star Lady Lika. That mystery was exactly why Edgar craved this high-stakes duel. Zeke just stood there absorbing the enemy's psychoanalysis. Finally breaking the ice, he smirked, claiming they would actually vibe perfectly. His own hands had been itching to clash steel with Edgar. Edgar wondered if he was just bluffing. Zeke swore he was dead serious. Among all the fighters, Edgar was completely different. Zeke knew the whispers calling him a once-in-a-century monster. Driven by that insane hype, he desperately needed to test Edgar's raw power himself. A psychotic grin stretched across Edgar's face, slowly unsheathing his katana. He whispered that his adrenaline was peaking. Zeke's killer gaze locked onto the razor-sharp blade. It had been ages since he threw down against a katana user. The exact millisecond the ref yelled, "Go!" Edgar vanished, blitzing toward Zeke with godlike velocity. That insane flash step totally blindsided Zeke, but instantly spiked his dopamine levels. In one single terrifying stride, Edgar closed the massive gap. Zeke watched absolutely hyped by his opponent's flawless footwork. Smirking with pure confidence, Aegis triggered an ultimate art. From the 1,000-blade style, the 9 blades, blasting it straight at Zeke. For a split second, Zeke froze, as the lethal aura of Aegis's katana completely evaporated from reality. But right before that phantom strike could shred his flesh, Aegis gasped in pure shock. His lethal blade had ripped through nothing but a lingering phantom. Aegis instantly realized the truth. Zeke had violently twisted his torso at the absolute final microsecond. He confessed he was dead sure that hit would connect. Zeke grinned, hyped up the flawless slash and demanded more heat. Without skipping a single heartbeat, Aegis exploded into motion. He fired off another brutal art, the wave blade, launching it directly at Zeke. Watching the lethal energy approach, Zeke mentally calculated its twisted trajectory. He realized reading it was practically impossible. Out of nowhere, pure shock gripped his mind. A hidden strike erupted straight from underground, totally catching him blind. Yet Zeke kept his absolute ice-cold composure. He hyped up Aegis's insane talent, casually stating that while he definitely refused to bleed today, his enemy's sword paths were absolute chaos. Right then, the truth hit Zeke hard. Aegis was an absolute combat prodigy. The guy warped his attack rhythm flawlessly, never bleeding an ounce of momentum. His aura surged with absolute perfection, leaving zero wasted effort, unleashing vicious slashes that perfectly synchronized with Zeke's own lung rhythm. Zeke knew this god-tier mastery demanded brutal, endless grinding. Over on the other side, Aegis stared, as his opponent effortlessly ghosted through every single one of his deadly strikes. His mind was blown that 0 attacks had actually connected. Giving massive respect, Aegis called Zeke an absolute beast, begging to uncover his insane training routine. Zeke just smirked, asking if he truly wanted the secret, then tossed a casual invite for a post-battle sparring session. A heartbeat later, the entire vibe shifted. Zeke instantly closed the gap, going fully on the offensive. Sparks of pure determination ignited in his eyes as he launched a devastating haymaker. Aegis slammed his katana up for a block, but the raw, monstrous kinetic energy violently rattled his entire skeleton. He was absolutely stunned. Was this seriously the raw output of a mere 2-star ranker? Zeke casually checked his bruised knuckles. He deliberately shifted his breathing to mind-game his enemy, but Aegis had already flawlessly adapted. The truth hit him hard. Aegis was an exponentially more terrifying warrior than he initially calculated. Aegis smirked, calling out Zeke's sudden aggression. He asked if his rival was finally done analyzing his swordplay. Zeke confidently confirmed that the data collection was basically over. That bold claim sent chills down Aegis's spine. Instantly, Aegis fired off another lightning-fast combo. Watching the blade descend, Zeke analyzed it as a total carbon copy. But his pupils dilated in pure horror right at impact, triggering the lethal, lingering shadow art. Aegis violently redirected his katana's path. The plot twist was insanely fast, tearing a vicious gash right across Zeke's chest. Securing first blood at last, Aegis mockingly asked if his combat prowess finally lived up to the hype. Gripping his freshly bleeding torso, Zeke was mentally spinning. The guy had actually shattered his flawless defense. Yet an absolutely manic grin stretched across his face. This clash of titans, he realized, was becoming wildly addictive. As their apocalyptic deathmatch escalated, the scene shifted. Sandy slowly opened her groggy eyes. Her squad immediately swarmed her, their expressions dripping with pure panic as they frantically checked her vitals. Sandy quickly calmed them down. But then, the brutal reality crashed over her. She got utterly wrecked by Laika, replaying that crushing defeat in her mind, and how Laika absolutely dominated. She breathed out a soft sigh, flashing a gentle smile. Despite taking the loss, her heart swelled with massive pride for Laika's insane power-up, totally respecting their epic showdown's finale. Facing her squad, Sandy dropped a heavy apology. If she had just secured victory, their special mission dreams would survive. Her squad instantly shut that down, begging for forgiveness instead. They confessed to being massive deadweights for both her and Aegis. They dropped their heads in crushing shame, but Sandy instantly vetoed it. She fiercely declared zero blame was on them. Their enemies were just absurdly overpowered. She hyped them up, explaining this just meant hitting the training arc 10 times harder. To guarantee this never repeats, Her fiery speech totally resurrected their morale, and fresh blazing determination flooded the squad. Sandy's focus then snapped to the tournament bracket. She questioned if the West versus South Hall deathmatch had officially kicked off. A teammate silently pointed at the main arena. Mind-blowingly, the previous round was still violently raging, putting on an absolute god-tier spectacle. Sandy tracked her gaze, watching two legendary silhouettes clashing with world-shattering kinetic fury. Pure shock paralyzed her whole body. She couldn't process the absolute insanity unfolding right before her. That technique was unmistakable. Aegis summoned his signature 5 aura blades. He was practically putting his very life on the line here. She couldn't look away from this legendary clash. Lyca's bold claim suddenly started ringing loud and clear inside her head. Zeke was the absolute apex predator here. She stood entirely speechless. She doubted it earlier, but watching this masterclass unfold, Lyca was speaking pure facts. Down below, Aegis suddenly went full throttle, unleashing a brutal 1000 battle-style strike. 5 lethal shadows rocketed straight at him, but Zeke, he ghosted through the onslaught effortlessly. Cold sweat dripped down Aegis's jaw. His mind short-circuited. How did his ultimate trump card just fail? Worse yet, after throwing hands for this long, Zeke hadn't even broken a sweat. What kind of absolute monster was this guy? Zeke kept it brutally humble. No cheat codes here, just absolute grinding. He pushed his base stamina to the limit. Flashy moves are cool, but raw, unyielding fundamentals, that is the bedrock of unstoppable power. Those words hit Aegis right in the chest. A fire ignited inside him. It was time to level up his physical grind. With resolve completely reignited, he lunged right back into the meat grinder, throwing a relentless bare-handed barrage. Zeke effortlessly pulverized every single incoming blade. While dodging, his mind instantly downloaded his opponent's combat data. The edge velocity and sheer weight behind those strikes were honestly insane. For his age, Aegis was reaching god tier. Still, Zeke saw the hidden diamond there. This kid's ceiling was absolutely astronomical. A knowing smirk flashed across our hero's face. Trading blows with Aegis unlocked a massive revelation. He finally grasped the core shift in modern combat. A stark contrast between his ancient era and the modern world. Back in his prime, exactly 1,000 years ago, combat was pure kinetic art. Warriors channeled the entire cosmos through raw physical motion, treating source energy as just a backup battery. But this new generation flipped the script. Today's awakened fighters weaponized their raw source energy right away. They made pure aura the actual weapon. Dominating that internal energy had straight up become the heartbeat of all modern martial arts. Weaving through the deadly onslaught, Zeke mentally facepalmed. He had been way too obsessed with the old-school physical forms. He totally slept on this massive evolutionary leap. Honestly though, seeing how combat philosophy mutated over a millennium was absolutely mind-blowing. Aegis kept pushing the offensive, but pure icy terror was slowly creeping up his spine. Zeke was flawlessly dismantling every single combo he threw out. The horrifying truth hit him like a freight train. This dude wasn't human. He was an unfathomable god of war. Up in the stands, the squad was sweating bullets. They had been throwing down for over an hour straight with no end in sight. But Lyca, she was completely unbothered. Ice in her veins. She casually dropped that both guys were freaks of nature, but the grand finale was approaching fast. Aegis suddenly pumped the brakes, a grim smirk appearing. He guessed the ultimate flex observation phase was finally over. Zeke didn't even cap. He confessed this clash had been an absolute goldmine of data. Aegis nodded, feeling that exact vibe. To honor this epic clash, Zeke promised to take everything he just absorbed and forge it right now. A brand new, devastating technique was about to drop. Slowly, the legendary powerhouse clenched his fist, gathering catastrophic energy. Suffocating pressure slammed into Aegis. He chuckled, completely out of breath. The agonizing reality set in. Victory was literally impossible here. But quitting wasn't in his DNA. He ignited every drop of his remaining aura for one desperate all-out. 5. Blade Ultimate Strike. He was going out swinging, but before his attack could pop off, Zeke erupted into the sky like a literal missile. Levitating like a descending deity, Zeke funneled an apocalyptic amount of source energy right into his knuckles. And then, pure devastation. A catastrophic meteor shower of massive golden fists carpet-bombed the arena. This was his terrifying new creation, the legendary Fist Star, an evolution of his dragon destruction arts. Deafening shockwaves absolutely ripped through the stadium back to back. The concrete shattered like glass. Students in the bleachers scattered in pure terror, minds blown by this apocalyptic firepower. The final golden payload nuked Aegis's position directly. A blinding detonation roared, threatening to tear the arena off its foundations. Raymond instantly slammed down a barrier over the squad, his jaw practically hitting the floor at this god-level violence. Sandy's brain completely blue-screened. Shaking from the shockwave, she could barely croak out a single question. Who actually survived that? Suddenly, Mentrig's voice thundered through the chaos, officially calling the match. As the massive dust clouds slowly started fading away, The camera panned to Aegis's absolutely pulverized katana. The boy was buried deep in a fresh crater, coughing up a defeated laugh. Completely paralyzed, he finally threw in the towel. He surrendered to Zeke's absolute astronomical power gap, realizing his own journey had barely even started. A victorious smirk lit up Zeke's face as East Hall took the ultimate W. The entire stadium erupted into absolute chaos. Spectators gasped, their minds completely shattered by the legendary clash they just witnessed. Nobody could process how a powerhouse like Aegis got absolutely crushed. Instructor Mantric instantly called a timeout. The battlefield lay in total ruins. West Hall and South Hall had to wait for repairs, giving the remaining squads time to brace themselves. Rangus and the crew were hyped beyond belief. Stars practically shined in their eyes. Literally no one predicted Zeke would totally obliterate Aegis like that. Leica gave a deadpan sigh. She teased Zeke for completely leveling the stage again, calling him a total freak of nature, in the best way. Zeke just shrugged it off. A win is a win, right? He played totally clueless, swiftly dodging the joke to pivot the team focus elsewhere. He warned them to lock in for the upcoming clash between West and South Hall. Leica nodded, her playful vibe vanishing instantly. She stressed how insanely critical this next brawl was. A terrifying top-tier candidate for a noble family seat was stepping onto the stage. Vanille Fafnir Eldradragon. Staring at the cratered wasteland he created, Zeke scratched his head, asking Rangus if he flexed a bit too hard. There was zero chance they could patch up that massive crater quickly. Rangus just chuckled, waving it off before pointing toward the edge. He told Zeke to watch the stage closely. Zeke gasped, his jaw dropping. The shattered concrete was literally piecing itself back together. How on earth was this magic even possible? Rangus broke it down, explaining that the entire Colosseum was forged from something legendary. It was crafted from pure aetherite. Pumping raw source energy into this ultra-rare stone triggered an instant rewind to its flawless state. Totally pristine. It clicked in the mind of the main character instantly. Humanity had seriously leveled up its tech during his 1,000-year absence. Suddenly, the loudspeakers blasted the name of Vanille. The absolute menace swaggered onto the pristine battlefield, oozing pure, unadulterated confidence. But defying literally every prediction, the duel ended in a flash. His rival stood absolutely frozen, unable to even process the attack. Dead silence choked the entire stadium. Spectators sat paralyzed, their minds breaking at the sheer overwhelming disrespect of that one-sided slaughter. West Hall utterly vaporized South Hall in seconds. As the dust settled, an icy chill crawled straight up the spine of Instructor Mantric. Something felt deeply wrong. Vanille just stood there completely unfazed. His challenger got wiped off the map so effortlessly it felt fake. It lacked the spark of a true battle. Honestly, Vanille looked bored out of his mind, practically questioning why he even bothered showing up. Mantric finally snapped out of it, his booming voice shattering the eerie quiet. He officially called the bout, cementing the absolute sweep. West Hall took the crown. Without missing a beat, he declared the ultimate showdown between East and West Hall was officially locked in. 60 minutes on the clock. The tension skyrocketed. The absolute climax of this insane tournament was literally right around the corner. Medics scrambled to drag the completely knocked out rival away. The remaining competitors just watched their souls, practically leaving their trembling bodies. That monstrous flex of absolute dominance left everyone entirely paralyzed. Meanwhile, the squad of Zeke locked eyes with the stage radiating heavy tension. Their faces turned dead serious. Leica whispered that his strength was downright terrifying, but Zeke frowned, his instincts screaming that something was off. The crushed rival kept replaying the nightmare. He recalled tracking the mana aura of Veniel, getting totally thrown off by how pitifully weak it felt. It defied all logic. He barely deflected the opening strike before an invisible tsunami of pressure completely swallowed him. His brain short-circuited, trying to comprehend the cosmic gap between them. The sheer difference in their power levels was absolutely suffocating. It reduced him to a shivering mess on the dirt, completely stripping away his will to even raise his fists. One phantom blow was all it took. The duel was brutally snuffed out before the first drop of sweat even hit the floor. Watching from the bleachers, Zeke caught the deeply disturbed glare of Mantric. It instantly clicked in his mind. He was not crazy for thinking this match was rigged. His eyes flashed with cold resolve, vowing to expose the hidden truth. Raymond looked totally mind-blown. Seeing a prestigious prodigy like Lyra get swatted like a totally helpless fly made zero sense to him. Another guy nervously muttered that Vanille was just built differently. Witnessing the apex predator in a live brawl for the first time was deeply traumatizing. The absolute slaughter left the whole roster terrified. Refusing to let despair win, Rick aggressively stepped up to hype the squad. He shouted that the enemy was a monster, but having Zeke and Leica was their ultimate cheat code. That was their winning card. His fiery pep talk completely crashed and burned. The crew just groaned, completely drained of hope. Soon after, the North Hall squad huddled up. The vibe was absolutely depressing. Rick caught Rangus staring blankly at the floor and instantly asked what was haunting his mind. Rangus gritted his teeth. Vanille was a solo nightmare, but his entire backup squad had flawlessly butchered their own matchups too. He dropped his gaze, practically drowning in shame. He muttered a pathetic apology, admitting the creeping dread was totally eating him alive. Marin aggressively interrupted the pity party. She owned up to her own bitter defeat, swallowing her immense pride to drop a harsh truth. She was leagues below those West Hall freaks. They operated in a completely different dimension of power. Rick backed her up sadly. South Hall got deleted so insanely fast, no one could even analyze their combat styles. Sick and tired of this suffocating doom and gloom, Rick smashed his fists together, his eyes burning with blazing resolve. He roared at the squad, screaming that backing down now was absolutely forbidden. Winning is our only destiny, he declared with absolute burning certainty. From the quiet shadows nearby, Zeke silently observed everything unfold. A satisfied smirk grazed his lips as their fiery determination finally reignited. He then shifted his razor-sharp gaze directly toward Laika. She hadn't uttered a single syllable. Witnessing Vanille's god-tier monstrous strength firsthand had completely shattered her usual ironclad composure. Her vacant eyes stared into the abyss, her fierce warrior pride completely crushed. Zeke debated stepping in to comfort her, but cheap words wouldn't magically heal this brutal wound, so he withheld his empty advice. Suddenly, Rangus approached, gently checking on her emotional state. Forcing a polite thanks, Laika immediately turned and vanished into the distance. Zeke simply watched her fading silhouette. She desperately needed pure isolation to silence her screaming, chaotic mind. Her heavy footsteps eventually dragged her toward a beautifully secluded courtyard, collapsing onto the cold stone edge of a tranquil water fountain. Gazing deeply into her own reflection, the brutal battle replayed relentlessly inside her head. How could Vanille reach such terrifying godlike heights? Demolishing Lyra in an absolute humiliating beatdown was completely unacceptable to her. Even the legendary Aegis couldn't obliterate Lyra so flawlessly without suffering at least a single scratch in fierce retaliation. The watery mirror vividly reflected her deepest, darkest trauma, forcing ancient scars to bleed anew. She plunged her trembling fingers into the icy pool, sending chaotic ripples outward, perfectly mirroring her fractured sanity. Suddenly, a brutal nightmare flashback of her final tragic clash with Vanille struck hard. She was merely 5 years old back then, suffering a devastating soul-crushing defeat. Since that cursed day, she had practically bled for absolute vengeance. Believing she had finally bridged their massive power gap, he had casually ascended to untouchable godhood. Her anxious mind wildly raced toward the upcoming tournament brackets, realizing Zeke was fated to clash with Vanille next. A shameful, cowardly wave of pure relief instantly flooded her soul, thankful she could dodge that terrifying monster. But that pathetic comfort violently twisted into a blazing, self-directed burning fury. She viciously squeezed her fist underwater. Frigid droplets violently exploded over the marble edges from her sudden, highly aggressive outburst, perfectly reflecting the raging storm inside her chest. Her own pathetic weakness thoroughly disgusted her. Feeling relieved meant completely surrendering her warrior's immortal pride. She swore a blood oath to totally crush him, whatever the ultimate cost. Suddenly, a chilling, familiar voice sliced through the heavy, dead silence. Vanille had been stalking her from the courtyard's edge. He and his dark sidekick prowled forward, wearing sickeningly arrogant, highly punchable smirks. "Why so gloomy, little girl?" he mocked with dripping condescension. Laika aggressively whipped around, her fierce glare shooting deadly daggers of absolute disgust. "What do you want, parasite?" she spat venomously. Vanille casually closed the distance, teasingly begging her not to be frosty. He smoothly lied, claiming he merely wished to praise her earlier glorious triumph in the arena. Disgusted by his toxic presence, Laika aggressively brushed him off and stormed away, but he flash-stepped closer, dropping his sinister tone into a terrifying predator's whisper. "I saw those desperate, completely terrified eyes locked on me during my absolute slaughter." Laika aggressively averted her gaze, entirely denying him the sick thrill of victory. Yet Vanille glided like a dark shadow right behind her back, hissing directly into her ear. "You're terrified of getting utterly crushed by me again, aren't you?" His highly toxic words dripped like lethal acid, violently piercing her darkest fears. He tightly gripped her shoulder, physically forcing her to listen. He demanded she confess her absolute inferiority, ordering her to abandon all hope and simply bow down. Reaching her absolute breaking point, Laika finally violently snapped. She whipped around like a hurricane, viciously swatting his filthy hand completely off her. Vanille didn't even blink. A sinister, twisted grin stretched across his face as he coldly chuckled, mocking her pathetic, uncute hostility. Glancing down at his temporarily rejected hand, he menacingly muttered that her miserable fate was already entirely sealed. With that bone-chilling threat, he faced his lackey, questioning if she understood their next lethal move. "Just leave the bloody execution to me," she smirked. His dark companion then questioned their ultimate strategy for completely obliterating that annoying bastard Zeke next. Veniel arrogantly shrugged off the concern, boasting that crushing him mid-battle would be absolute child's play. However, his sharp-eyed companion remained highly paranoid. She acutely sensed that Zeke possessed a dangerously monstrous hidden aura, aggressively insisting they deploy lethal countermeasures just to be entirely foolproof. Veniel reluctantly nodded, deeply acknowledging Zeke's terrifyingly razor-sharp combat instincts. Detecting their deadly trap would cause massive, catastrophic problems. An intensely intimidating image of Zeke violently flashed across his mind. He vividly recalled the earth-shattering godlike power his fierce opponent unleashed while absolutely decimating Aegis earlier. He also carefully analyzed how Zeke had seemingly absorbed those fatal heavy strikes totally intentionally. Veniel fully realized this upcoming bloodbath wouldn't be a simple cakewalk, but a devious, totally foolproof trap was already brewing in his twisted mind. Exchanging a sinister glare, Veniel and his minion bumped fists in silent, deadly agreement. Veniel then maliciously submerged his hand into the fountain. Instantly, a toxic, glowing purple venom bled from his fingertips into the crystal pool. "Fear not," he coldly whispered with absolute spine-chilling arrogance, watching the pure water mutate into a sickly violet nightmare. "I will ruthlessly slaughter Zeke in the arena and shatter his very soul entirely." The ultimate showdown had finally arrived. Rick squeezed his fists, crushed by the suffocating gravity of this epic moment. He intensely sweated, knowing they were clashing against West Hall's merciless elites, an infamous brutal squad, legendary for ruthlessly hunting down the weak. His warrior's pride rapidly crumbled, desperately questioning if they possessed even a tiny sliver of hope to survive. Paralyzing doubt violently poisoned his frantic mind. That blazing resolve from mere seconds ago, he was already letting it completely fizzle out. Whack! Zeke's hand slapped the back of his skull, instantly shattering his doubts. "You absolute moron," Zeke barked. "Where did that fiery energy go?" Zeke scoffed, his eyes deadpan as he totally glared a hole straight through him. Why enter the ring just to take an L? He reminded Rick that true battles demand a killer instinct to win, regardless of the monster standing across from him. Those heavy words hit Rick hard. To claim victory, he whispered, his inner fire violently reigniting. "You grinded for this, right?" Zeke flashed a cocky smirk. "So back yourself up." Utterly hyped, Rick nodded his thanks, his warrior aura blazing back to life. "Perfect," Zeke smirked. "Now listen closely to this pro tip. Loosen up those shoulders." Rick blinked, totally bewildered by such a basic cheat code. Zeke revealed the secret the Great Force Fist requires, channeling every ounce of energy into one singular devastating focal point. Tensing up just leaks that explosive aura everywhere. "Take a breath and loosen up," Zeke instructed smoothly, shoving Rick's tense posture into the perfect stance. That micro-adjustment changed everything. Instantly, massive shockwaves of aura pumped through Rick's veins. "I can totally crush this," he hyped himself up. "Thanks, man." Zeke just nudged him forward to claim his inevitable W. Watching them, Lika narrowed her eyes. Zeke wasn't even a great force user, yet he understood their secret arts with absolute terrifying precision. How did this guy master the mechanics of countless rival styles? "Spill your secrets," she demanded intensely. "It makes literally zero sense." Zeke's goofy face instantly darkened into deadpan seriousness, admitting her suspicion was completely dead on. Lika stepped closer, holding her breath, convinced he was about to drop the massive lore bomb she had craved for months. Instead, Zeke flashed an obnoxiously cocky grin, thumbing his own chest. "Because I'm just built different." Lika's hopeful expression instantly flatlined into pure disgust. Expecting a real answer was her biggest mistake. Meanwhile, 0-hour hit. The arena bell loomed as Rick locked eyes with his deadly opponent. Standing there was the exact same overpowered prodigy from round 1, except now Rick's paralyzing terror had completely evaporated away, swapped out for absolute hellfire in his gaze. He swore he wouldn't take another L. Across the ring, Eden just sneered at the audacity. How dared this pathetic loser who previously choked against North Hall suddenly act so incredibly cocky? "Zip it," Rick roared out. "I've leveled up since then." Eden merely flashed a psychotic smirk. "Leveled up, really?" Instructor Mantric's booming voice shattered the tension, officially kicking off the East versus West Hall bloodbath. Fighters engage. Eden whipped out his lethal dagger, eager to violently expose Rick's so-called glow-up as pure trash talk. A blistering dash instantly closed the gap, startling Rick. "You can't magically get good in hours," Eden shrieked like a maniac. He unleashed the deadly insect dagger art Mantis Cut, blasting a lethal arc of glowing green aura straight at Rick's neck. But jaw-droppingly, Rick tanked the devastating slash using pure, unadulterated aura defense. Eden's smug face completely shattered in sheer disbelief. "You blocked my blade with raw aura," he screeched aggressively, daring the underdog to pull that stunt twice. Chaining into his insect-like combo, he aimed to obliterate Rick's shield. The heavy kinetic impact shoved Rick backwards, yet his feet remained firmly planted. "Is that it, scrub?" Eden taunted wildly. "Where's that new power?" Rick clenched his jaw tightly. This guy was a monster, but throwing in the towel wasn't an option anymore. Calling him utter trash, Eden smoothly ghosted past Rick's panic-driven counter. The speed gap was brutal. Slash. A crimson line blossomed across Rick's cheek as the steel blurred. Panic set in. Playing defensively meant he'd literally never score a single hit. Suddenly, Zeke's chill voice echoed through his panicked brain. Drop the tension. The mental replay instantly clicked. Recalling the secret of funneling max aura into one singular strike, his game plan crystallized. Time to gamble everything on one final insane play. Thoroughly ticked off by this cockroach-like resilience, Eden lunged forward with his piercing needle sting. However, Rick's eyes tracked the savage combo perfectly. The enemy's chaotic rhythm suddenly looked completely predictable. Milliseconds before that deadly tip pierced his flesh, a wicked knowing smirk hijacked Rick's face. Checkmate, he breathed out softly. Eden's pupils violently shrunk, in pure horror. Pulling a maneuver of pure suicidal genius, Rick clamped his bare hand directly onto the razor-sharp steel. Eat this! Rick violently roared, his free hand erupting with a blinding, pulsating shockwave of destructive aura. The ultimate counterattack was fully primed. Great Force Fist. That hyper-compressed bomb of raw energy ruthlessly smashed straight into Eden's defenseless ribcage. The devastating shockwave violently launched the arrogant prodigy, ragdolling completely across the massive battleground. Hundreds of spectators totally froze, jaws literally hitting the floor in absolute shock. As the smoke gracefully cleared, a smug "I told you so" smirk crept onto Zeke's face. Instructor Mantrick stepped up, ready to finally crown the undisputed champion of this brutal brawl. Victory goes to East Hall, he bellowed loudly. Meanwhile, Eden twitched helplessly inside a literal crater carved out by his own crash landing. Rick stared blankly at his trembling palms, his brain short-circuiting over his impossible W. Then an explosive tsunami of absolute hype crashed through his soul. "Let's go!" he roared triumphantly, punching his glorious fist into the heavens. Meanwhile, Eden's mind completely short-circuited. Did he seriously just get clapped by a total nobody? His ego lay in absolute ruins. Trembling, he faced his squad leader Veniel, begging for forgiveness. "I messed up, sir," he choked out, dropping to his knees. But Veniel just twirled his blade and violently punted Eden across the arena. The terrifying message, failure equals death. Veniel then glared at his remaining crew. Get the picture. His dead-eyed stare locked on them as he dropped a spine-chilling order. Obliterate them. The squad erupted into bloodthirsty cheers, completely locked in. Now, it was Marin's time to step up. Riding his own hype, Rick hyped her up from the bleachers. Marin gripped her blade, deadlocked onto the stone-faced West Hall spear wielder. The referee finally yelled for the second round to pop off. Marin blitzed forward instantly, triggering her crimson flame art. Spark cut. Searing heat exploded from her weapon as she closed the gap. Yet the West Hall guy casually swatted away the inferno using his spear shaft. He effortlessly parried her relentless combos, twirling his weapon into an absolute meat grinder of a shield. The power gap was insane. Shoving her away like a ragdoll, he went on the offensive. He sparked his signature move. The Great Chaos Spear art-piercing chaotic blow. The earth-shattering impact launched Marin into the stratosphere. She crashed violently against the dirt, hacking up a pool of crimson. But her attacker felt zero pity, chaining instantly into another savage thrust. From the sidelines, Rangus watched the overkill in pure, unadulterated shock, sickened by the total lack of humanity. The spearhead brutally impaled Marin right through her ribs. The East Hall squad flinched at the gore. Rick howled in blind fury, lunging toward the ring, but Raymond aggressively pinned him down. Witnessing that fatal strike, the referee desperately blew the whistle. West Hall secured the flawless victory. The spearman loomed arrogantly over Marin's shattered frame. Ripping himself free, Rick sprinted straight to her. Cradling her bleeding body, he screamed her name in pure panic. But Marin's eyes stayed terrifyingly shut. Zeke remained frozen, his expression completely unreadable. That absolute massacre left Marin blacked out and critically injured. East Hall swarmed around her, entirely paralyzed by dread and sorrow. Up in the bleachers, even the usually emotionless Zeke could not mask his dark, twisting fury. Sure, West Hall was known for playing dirty, but this bloodbath, completely unhinged. While medics scrambled, the spearman casually strolled off zero guilt over the carnage he caused. Seeing red, Rick aggressively corners him. Yo was straight up butchering her really necessary. The attacker glares back, his eyes dead and violently arrogant. "What is your deal?" he sneers. "What do you mean, what is my deal?" Rick snaps back. "This is a battlefield, idiot. I just double-tapped to guarantee my win," the spearman flexes. Rick's mind is absolutely blown. That is straight-up psycho. Celine jumps in screaming. "Exactly. Nobody needed to get slaughtered out here." The spearman merely smirks. "You guys are painfully soft," he mocks, his tone laced with absolute poison. "West Hall does not play pretend. We exterminate our targets, end of the freaking story." That toxic mindset was totally brainwashed into them by Veniel. Lika marches up her knuckles, turning white. Did Veniel order that hit? His response is ice cold, and if he did, stay mad about it. If you are scared, just forfeit now. While Marin is stretchered out, the psycho keeps yapping. Are you literally dense? The referee kept his mouth shut. She still wanted smoke, so I shattered her spirit. It is just basic math. Laika is literally seeing red, screaming, "You absolute coward," but the arrogant jerk just spins around, completely ignoring her rage. Arguing with trash is dragging down my IQ. He peeks over his shoulder, dropping one last venomous threat. Stop crying over spilled blood, because your entire squad is about to get put in the dirt. He walks off with a mocking smirk. Hate the game, not the player. The forfeit button is right there, just saying. Boom, West Hall's next heavy hitter crashes the stage. Enter Letton, and his killer gaze is laser-focused on Rangus. Spotting his rival, Rangus drops his name with a cocky grin. Letton. The dude stares back with god-tier arrogance. Bottom feeders like you need to keep my name out of your mouth. Letton sneers, so you are actually choosing death bet. I would love to turn you into a bloody mess, like your little friend. His grin turns absolutely demonic as he whispers. Or do you want a repeat of what I did back home? Speak up, pathetic Rangus. That psychological damage hits critical mass. Rangus's eyes instantly cloud over with deep, traumatizing flashbacks. Laika screams for him, ready to jump the fence, but Rangus simply raises his palm. Chill, Laika. He slowly gets to his feet. I am done running, Rangus growls, his voice trembling with raw determination. His squad watches in breathless anxiety as he steps up to confront his darkest demons. A fierce fire ignites in his gaze. He points a steady finger dead at his rival. Right here, right now, Letton, I will crush your legacy. Letton merely scoffs, radiating absolute boredom. Whatever. Meanwhile, medics rush a battered Marin out on a stretcher. A suffocating tension choking the entire Colosseum. The audience is still trembling from that last bloodbath, dreading another total massacre. Rangus stands completely isolated in the massive ring, the screaming spectators fading into white noise. Panic spikes in his chest, his bravado crumbling fast. Suddenly, a phantom sensation makes him flinch. Hold up, is Zeke talking inside my head? This is not just a flashback. Some crazy mystical connection is activating. The image of Zeke flashes before his eyes, exuding absolute chill. Relax, his mental voice hums. Just testing out a neat little trick I picked up. Back in the day, Zeke had copied this exact psychic intrusion from an overpowered librarian years ago, completely mastering it. Literal telepathy. Rangus is totally freaking out. Bro, I am so confused right now. He panics, drowning in the anxiety. Zeke casually raises one finger to drop some wisdom. Listen closely. I beamed into your brain to give you a cheat code. Rangus looks stunned. A cheat code. The tone of Zeke shifts to dead serious. Remember the ancient proverb, clouds drift without bounds, water carves its own path. Rangus just blinks, totally lost by the riddle. Drifting clouds, Zeke breaks it down. Clouds never get trapped and water never stops moving. When death comes knocking, channel that exact flow. Those heavy words echo out as the mental link shatters, slamming Rangus back into the brutal present. Hey, zone out on your own time, Instructor Metric barks. Rangus shakes off the dazed sweating bullets. My bad, the referee sighs, looking utterly annoyed at the delay, before finally calling the bloodbath. East Hall against West Hall, round 3. The fighters lock eyes. Murderous intent, suffocating the entire stadium. Fight Letton instantly explodes off the ground, like a bullet. Rangus violently reacts, igniting the exact secret arts Zeke passed down. Cloud and Water Spear arts. Piercing rapids, but Letton sees it coming. Know your place, you filthy bug. He intercepts the deadly thrust with pure malice, erupting in a toxic purple aura. Venomous serpent blade. His sword literally manifests into a roaring phantom snake, striking with lethal precision. The auras clash violently, but Letton is just built different. The phantom fangs completely obliterate the water strike. Letton smirks like a demon shoving Rangus across the dirt. All that trash talk for 0 damage. You absolute extra. He chains another brutal combo without mercy. Incoming Rangus panics, barely tracking the speed. Letton activates a second venomous strike. Wait, what? Rangus gasps as the physical sword impossibly curves through space. The coil slash. This move defies all logic, wrapping around the polearm to carve a bloody gash right into his ribs. He shrieks in agony, staggering backward while bleeding out. That was perfectly blocked. How did it bend? Letton just cackles. Losing steam already. Hit me back. He dive bombs again, eyes glowing with psychotic joy. If your weak body even lets you, Rangus bites his lip until it bleeds. Screw this. I am not going down. Desperately recalling the library flashback, Rangus forces his aura to flow. Cloud and Water Spear arts. Drifting sky, raging river. Letton just flashes a villainous smile, swatting it away like nothing. He has perfectly downloaded this moveset. Eat dirt, Letton roars. A terrifying barrage of phantom snakes crashes down, smashing Rangus straight into the bedrock. His cracking weapon barely deflecting the lethal blows. The East Hall squad is absolutely losing their minds in pure terror, screaming for him. Rangus fights to just keep his head up, his armor shattered and skin bruised purple. Every single flinch is being read like an open book. I just need one clean parry. His mind races in desperation. But he is literally punishing my every twitch. Letton stands over his broken body, looking down like he is trash, trying to use my momentum against me. Absolutely tragic. You are honestly hilarious, you little rat. Want a spoiler on my ultimate fighting style? It is perfectly countering yours. Sucks for you. My reaction time is leagues above yours. Rangus stares at the sky, the light leaving his eyes. Then Letton crosses the ultimate line. I am not sure who sold you this fake confidence, but the bastard son of a fake dragon is born weak. He savagely yanks Rangus up by the scalp, snapping his neck back. You will die a massive failure, just like your old man. That forbidden trigger word shatters everything. Absolute bloodlust erupts in the eyes of Rangus. Keep his name out of your mouth. But Letton just cackles maniacally, his expression twisted into pure evil. A cheap knockoff he violently stomps the face of Rangus back into the dirt. Will never beat the original. He bellows, launching a devastating kick straight into his ribs. Rangus completely crumples, hacking up crimson. The match feels officially dead as he bleeds out on the freezing floor, every bone screaming in agony. Soul-crushing despair washes over him. It is over. I thought the grinding made me a beast. But I was delusional. I am still literal trash. A solitary, heartbreaking tear cuts through the blood and dirt on his shattered face. I am nothing but a fraud. Suddenly, his consciousness slips into a sunlit, nostalgic childhood memory. His dad softly asks, Rangus, do you enjoy fishing? A tiny, wide-eyed Rangus lights up. Yes, I absolutely adore it. His dad flashes a gentle grin. I see we match completely. Staring across the tranquil ripples, his dad's face softens with absolute peace. I love casting a line like this, just admiring the clouds reflecting below. He glances down. Do those sunken clouds captivate you too? The little boy immediately nods. Yes. Those clouds rest so peacefully while the current endlessly pushes forward. His dad slowly agrees. Watching them proves that our heaviest mortal burdens are actually entirely meaningless. Gently, he rests a warm palm atop his boy's hair. Someday that truth will hit you. Snap back to reality. Rangus lies absolutely shattered inside the arena. The vision dissolves, yet those words endlessly ripple through him. Instructor Mentric glares silently, face completely stoic. He is visibly exhausted by this total massacre, yet Letton craves more blood. He charges up a devastating finishing strike. Time to die. You are exactly like your pathetic dad. Trash always remains trash. Prepare to spend your entire existence kissing dirt. However, dragging his father's name does not crush his spirit. Instead, a dormant power violently awakens. Pure realization suddenly ignites inside his exhausted gaze. That faded paternal whisper now rings like absolute thunder within his soul. The heavens drift unbothered, while the relentless river eternally surges. Right then, Rangus realizes he shouldn't be a solid cliff against the gale. He must become the relentless tide instead. Azure energy surges from his palms, swirling like a riptide. He intercepts the strike with liquid grace. As his strike stalls, Letton's eyes nearly pop out. His finisher totally shut down. No way, he screams, his power vanishing. High above the crowded arena, head instructor Mentric maintains his silent vigil over the unfolding chaos. A subtle, sharp grin tugs at his mouth. Finally, he whispers, watching as Rangus pulls himself up. The look of defeat is gone, replaced by a radiant golden glow. His family legacy has finally sparked to life. He's no longer a fraud. He's found his true calling as the absolute master of the flow principle. Letton stands there, completely shook. Seconds ago, he owned the stage. Now his rival is literally beaming. This energy is on a whole new tier. How does a 3-star have this much heat? Rangus is still bleeding. Yet his gaze is razor sharp now. Wrapped in gold, he's achieved a legendary mid-combat awakening that defies logic. Letton's ego hits a breaking point. He white-knuckles his hilt while violet lightning dances across the steel. No way is a loser outshining him. With a primal snarl, he vows he'll never bow down to a nobody. The swordsman pours every drop of fury into a final lunge, unleashing his ultimate technique once more. A whirlwind of jagged strikes floods the ring. It's that same snake-like attack that nearly broke Rangus earlier, but the vibe has shifted. Rangus's eyes are shimmering with an eerie glow, tracking every blink and exit motion. He isn't just dodging, he's predicting. With newfound elegance, Rangus dances effortlessly through the lethal steel. That once unavoidable combo now looks like slow-motion amateur hour. It's like he's literally waltzing with the chaos itself. Letton is paralyzed. He can't fathom how Rangus is reading him like an open book. Pure panic takes hold. Refusing to quit, Letton doubles down with a savage, desperate barrage. He's just swinging wildly now. Intended to shatter any guard, Rangus merely lifts his spear with zen-like focus and a smooth, liquid motion. Rangus parries the tempest of blades effortlessly. He halts the entire assault without giving up a single centimeter. The momentum has totally flipped. Letton's face is twisted in pure horror. How this can't be happening, he howls. From the sidelines, Zeke and Laika are glued to the action. Laika's biting her lip, but Zeke remains chill. He notes that Rengus has touched the true source. A spiraling azure mist envelopes him as the realization hits. The hidden secrets of the cloud and water spear style, his family's legacy, are finally clear to him. Laika's lost on the essence part. Zeke breaks it down. Clouds drift peacefully, while water never ceases its journey. It's pliable and shapeless. Just as Zeke explains it, Rengus puts that exact philosophy into deadly practice. He isn't clashing head-on. Instead, he drinks in the impact and spits it back, becoming invincible through pure fluidity. Zeke keeps narrating, sounding low-key proud. He mentions that even though he only gave Rengus a tiny hint, the guy actually mastered it mid-fight in record time. Laika watches her jaw practically on the floor. Rengus probably doesn't even know it, but his focus has reached a plane beyond anyone else in the arena. Now it's Rengus's time to hunt. Cloaked in gold, his first step forward radiates a crushing heavy pressure. Letten recoils, his face draining of color. The victim he used to torment is now a god of serenity. He screams at Rengus to back off, flailing his blade like a cornered animal. His mind is pure static. Rengus deflects the mess effortlessly. His spear flows like a relentless river, and he isn't even breathing hard. As their steel meets, the gap in their skill is blinding. Letten's sword is vibrating with sheer pathetic weakness. Meanwhile, Rengus's spearhead is a rock representing total mastery. Seeing this, a savage smirk spreads across Zeke's face. He knows water isn't always peaceful. With a violent flick, Rengus strips Letten of his sword, leaving him defenseless. The aura around Rengus starts to churn. The calm is over. Letten whimpers as Rengus charges his final lethal strike. Zeke's voice cuts through the air. When the tide turns into a flood, nothing survives. A surge of power erupts from the spear's tip, locked onto the helpless Letten. The ensuing explosion is absolutely massive and soul-shaking. This is the peak of the cloud and water style. Letten's cry is choked off as the blast obliterates him. His eyes roll back as he blacks out instantly. From the VIP box, Instructor Mentric watches with satisfied approval. He calls the match right there. Letten is buried in a pile of rubble, both his ego and bones shattered. It's finally over. The commentator's voice thunders throughout the stadium. Victory belongs to the East Wing. Rengus stood frozen as the adrenaline ebbed away, his mind lost in a total fog. He stared from his trembling palms to the wreckage like waking from a fever dream. He was totally dazed. Suddenly, his squad swarmed him, with Laika leading the charge. Beaming with joy, she hyped his 3-star breakthrough and that legendary win. While the others roared, Rengus struggled to process it, stammering about the victory. Reality finally crashed down when he spotted the crater where Letten lay broken. He turned to his ecstatic comrades, his brain finally syncing with the hype. Laika and Celine were grinning ear to ear, validating his win. He'd actually pulled it off. He'd finally crushed the rival who'd haunted him. He glanced at his spear. Deep in thought, toppling Letten felt like a milestone bigger than any team's score. Overwhelmed with emotion, Rengus broke. A solitary tear of triumph traced his cheek. He white-knuckled his weapon, making a silent vow. This was only the beginning. His crew snapped him back. Rick excitedly grilled him about that insane move. Raymond joined in, eyes bulging. He compared it to a dragon scaling a waterfall. Rengus looked just as clueless, insisting he had zero knowledge of the technique. They looked to Zeke, who coolly identified it as the Ascending Dragon Thrust. Zeke explained it originated from Volume 2, a book Rengus hadn't even opened yet. He praised Rengus's solo mastery. Stunned, Rengus questioned how Zeke knew the secret. Visibly sweating, Zeke scrambled for an excuse about seeing it in Dragon Hall. He played it cool, but his heart raced. He couldn't admit he'd invented it. Lika fell for the bluff as they partied. Zeke reflected on the truth. This spear style was a forbidden art he'd forged in his previous life. He didn't recall recording it. Others must have transcribed his work into volumes. They'd buried its essence from rookies, but Rengus was the one who shocked him. He'd unlocked the gate to that secret power alone through sheer raw strength. Zeke shot his friend a proud smirk. He knew Rengus had massive talent. The coach killed the vibe, barking orders. Celine offered a rapid-fire apology. The squad snapped to attention, spirits soaring as they regrouped into formation. That win tilted West Hall. Suddenly, the following matches turned into absolute wars. Round 4 kicked off. Celine gave her all but fell short by inches. Veniel watched in silence. For the 5th duel, Raymond stepped into the ring. Displaying insane grit, he secured a hard-earned victory after a brutal slugfest. Buddies dragged his bruised body off. Rengus gave him props for the work. Up in the bleachers, the girls tallied scores. Celine apologized for her loss. Laika brushed it off, flashing 3 fingers on one hand and 2 on another. 3 wins to 2 victory was certain. Laika stepped up, vowing to win. As she turned, Zeke materialized right next to her face, inches from hers. He grilled her headspace. Surprised, she shoved him back, promising a win. Rengus cheered, but Zeke stayed silent. She flashed a grin, yelling her intent. However, Zeke's eyes sharpened. He sensed a massive surge. A cold shiver raced down his spine. Something was horribly wrong.